I grew up with the funny pages in the 80s and 90s. I loved Calvin and Hobbes, Bloom County, The Far Side. I always thought Peanuts was severely underrated by my generation. But the thing is, I read every comic available on those pages. I even read Doonesbury. I don't know why, other than I'm a completist. One comic I read and often liked was called Maxine. It ran in the Dallas Morning News, I think many papers, but Morning News is my hometown paper, and I read it through the 90s and late 80s. Maxine was a funny feminist daily with a simple, squiggly aesthetic and a super dry sense of humor. Maybe not the Far Side, but still like top-notch shit by artist Marion Henley. So in 1997, I'm working at my first job in Dallas, and my coworker Melissa says, "Come to lunch with me and my friend," and I do. And her friend is Marion Henley, creator of the Maxine comic strip. Holy shit, I say I fucking love your comic. And we hit it off immediately. She's got this like 22-year-old boy who's like a huge fan of her strip that probably had a demographic of mostly 35 to 65-year-old women. But our conversation soon halted when the topic of Bret Easton Ellis came up. Like, I enjoyed Bret Easton Ellis. I read a lot of his works at that time. And Marion, not so much. She mentioned her distaste particularly for American Psycho, and I tried to offer my own take on, quote, what he was going for, but Marion was having none of it. And so I pulled out the classic lines, "Have you read the book?" When she said no, I finished her off with a, "Well, don't judge something you haven't actually read." And man, I kind of feel bad about saying that. There is a defense to be made for American Psycho, the novel, but read the book might not be the most considerate defense because that book is fucking disgusting. The only book that's ever made me physically ill. Separate art from artist, sure, but Ellis has some fucked up ideas about what you can do to torture and destroy a female body. Satire or misogyny, your call, but it's not for the faint of heart. And it rightfully had a lot of people very upset in the 90s, including Christian Bale's future stepmother, Gloria Steinem. So the man who first bought so, the man who first brought this book to Hollywood was Stuart Gordon, director of Reanimator. He thought it would be a perfect ultra-violent black and white film. In the early 1990s, Gordon handed it to producer Edward R. Pressman, who had made horror classics like Sisters, Phantom of the Paradise, Talk Radio, Bad Lieutenant, and The Crow. Pressman read the book and said, "This is really interesting. You know who I think should direct it, who would really get the satire, the dissection of toxic, fragile male masculinity and violence?" And Gordon said, "I don't know who." And Pressman said, "A woman." And the distributors were like, "LOL, that's funny. What about Cronenberg?" And that was who was going to do it for a while. But Cronenberg and Stuart Gordon, these are body horror guys. They would have had really interesting takes on this novel, but they might miss the satire for the gore. And then Pressman saw Mary Harron's film, I Shot Andy Warhol, and said, "You. I want you to direct American Psycho." And Mary said, "Okay, but you do have to pay me, and I get to pick my actors, and then you get to fuck off." And Pressman said, "Roger that." Hi, Cecil.
Hi, Jeffrey.
What's a movie you would like to see again, but with a totally different director?
Oh, a movie I'd like to see again with a totally different director.
Not that you want that movie, not that you thought that movie was bad, but just you
But
would be
like love the
curious.
idea of the movie, but in different hands.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, like most horror movies, oftentimes, I'm just like, these are great. Why? Oh no, horror movies made before like 1990. Many of those.
Uh-huh. Yes. Yeah, getting like a reboot of I guess we've had a few of those, right? Like
Yeah,
obviously like the Rob Zombie Halloween
sure. Yeah.
remake sort of thing. There's been Texas Chainsaw Massacre remakes,
Yep.
etc.
Yep. I mean, my thing about that question is that usually when I watch a movie and I'm disappointed with it, I kind of forget it.
Mm-hmm.
Like it goes into the discard pile, you
Yes.
know? So it's like hard for me to cull back and be like, oh, what a great idea that this totally would have maybe worked in somebody else's hands because it would have required an entire retooling of the focus, the content, the like not only what happens in the film, but what the film is about.
Right, right. I sort of think sometimes like similar directors with like a different visual aesthetic. So I was thinking about like Royal Tenenbaums is so specifically like a
Yeah,
Wes Anderson movie.
yeah,
But I was like, what if you put Sofia Coppola in there? Like what if because then you really go
yeah,
down the rabbit hole of like isolation and sadness within a
yeah,
family, et
yeah.
cetera, et cetera. But of course, like speaking of Wes Anderson, what if he redid Taxi Driver? Like, what would
Right?
that look
What
like?
if?
I was telling you I was learning so much about this movie yesterday after watching it and kind of skimming through the book again. And yeah, it was really interesting because the Christian Bale was pretty unknown
Yeah.
when he came in. Like, obviously, he had been in movies, but uh, this book was such a hot commodity and it was
Yeah.
so controversial. And
Yep.
the only way that I think Lionsgate got involved and the only way they would do it, they were like, they even announced at like Sundance or something that Leo DiCaprio is going to play Patrick
Yep.
Bateman.
And I think Oliver Stone was going to direct it at one point,
Yep.
but then Leonardo DiCaprio was like, I want $15 million.
Uh-huh.
And oh, by the way, I'm going to go also go make the beach. So peace out. Which is funny because I remember my junior year of college, I was studying abroad in England, which meant that, I was in a new country and I had lots of time on my hands. So I read a lot of books that semester,
Hmm.
and The Beach and American Psycho were two of them.
Interesting. I never read The Beach.
I read it at the wrong time. Like
Uh-huh.
I was in the middle of England in winter, and here I am reading about like f motoring around Phuket, and it's all like sunny, beachy, and I was like, oh God, I this is depressing. I wish I was in Phuket making questionable moral choices.
Uh, I I think the thing I really fixated on in learning about this movie was just how dedicated Mary Harron was to Christian Bale doing
Yeah,
this role.
yeah.
And by all accounts, it was a great environment. Like I think Christian Bale has some history of being a difficult person.
He is as a friend as a friend of ours once says, why is it always the assholes who go full method?
Yep.
And he
Yeah.
seems like one of those. Like, apparently, he stuck to the American accent the entire time he did the shoot, to the
Hmm.
point where, like, on after they wrapped, they did a wrap party, and he like swapped back to his sort of native Welsh accent. And people thought that that was an accent for a role
Hmm.
because they only ever knew him as an American accent. Accent work, that's fine because like once if you can get it in your head, that's great. But he does seem like one of those who's like, "Oh, you want me to lose 150 pounds? You want me to gain 100?" Like he did the workout regimen mentioned in the movie every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Seems like a lot.
He the one story I had read was is that when Mary Harron went to go introduce him to Bret Easton Ellis to get kind of
Yeah,
he showed up as in full Patrick Bateman
as
character.
Patrick Bateman.
And Ellis was said later that he was like, I mean, listen, I was convinced, but after like 30 minutes of this, I was like, man, you have to stop.
Please stop. Please stop.
The other thing was, oh God, what's our man? Oh, Josh Lucas is in this movie. The Table of Handsome Assholes.
I know,
Uh,
right?
him and Justin Theroux and Christian Bale. But Josh Lucas had said later, I think he worked on like Ford versus Ford and Ferrari,
Okay.
whatever that
Ford and
movie is.
Ferrari. Yeah.
But he said that it was great reconnecting with Christian Bale because he said he told Christian Bale he said nobody really quite knew what to make of you on set because you were always doing this thing in character and whatever else. So we're like, man, this guy's really talented but really strange, and we didn't know until the movie came out and we saw it just how brilliant you were
Yeah.
at it
Yeah.
because we were just like, this man is in a different film than we are.
Yeah.
But he
Well, it's
and
yeah.
oh, I was gonna say one more thing was he pointed out Christian Bale is the only actor during the business card scene. He's like, I've seen actors, plenty of actors who can cry on cue.
Sure.
Christian Bale can sweat on cue. I'm like, that's fucking phenomenal
Yeah. Yeah.
and
I
gross.
mean, it makes sense because one, this is a movie told from Patrick Bateman's fractured point of
Hmm.
view. And Patrick Bateman is literally in every single scene except for when Gene finds his diary.
Yeah.
So like this is like a leading role beyond all, like he is in every single scene.
Yes.
So he
Yeah.
kind of has to be that on.
Hmm.
Like that character has to be that fully fleshed out.
Yeah. One final note that I'll say is when Bateman, or I'm sorry, when Christian Bale got the script from Mary Harron, he read it, loved it, called her on the phone and said, I'm gonna say this, and I hope it is not insulting because I don't know your work that well. But I found this to be the funniest script I've ever read. And she was like, thank you.
Yes. Jeffrey, I have to say, so it's been a minute since I've
Uh-huh.
watched this film. Like it's been, 5+ years. I forgot how funny this movie is.
It's a very funny movie.
And watching this movie for a horror podcast made me very aware of the horror aspects.
Hmm.
And I think the memory of this movie and the horror of it is kind of built up. And then in actually watching it, I was like, oh, this actually subverts so many horror tropes
Yes.
for satire, for comedy.
Hmm.
Like you don't actually see that many acts of violence in this movie. It's much more implied or something, like you'll see people with a bloody nose crying, leaving the apartment, but you don't see the act of violence.
Hmm.
You see the aftermath, which one is like so much scarier because you're like, what the fuck just happened?
Yeah.
You're kind of on the back foot, but also it makes it what is the story? Like, what
Hmm.
is actually going on? Which plays into Patrick Bateman, lunatic
Hmm.
narrator, faulty
Hmm.
narrator.
This movie is a lot like I said this when we watched Cemetery Man, and I think this movie is similar in that I think its closest comp is not a horror movie. I think its
Yeah.
closest comp is Catch 22.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah. Yeah.
think the humor in this movie is way darker than Catch 22, but it's Catch 22 is very dark. It's
Well, yeah,
just
Catch-22 is a war film
hmm
that's really a comedy
hmm
set during a war. This
and
is
it
a comedy that's set in a horror movie
yeah.
film.
Yes.
Because
Uh
Jeffrey, I gotta say, last night the fucking the dishes that they were eating
uh-huh.
were sending me.
There's everything in this
Sending
movie.
me the
Yes.
peanut butter soup, the marmalade with a trout meatloaf. I was like, oh, bleh, bleh. Oh my God.
So gross.
Like this is fucking funny, but it's also like it's more satire than it is horror.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And to the costumes and the style of
Oh
this film
God,
too.
yeah.
It's also so rare that you see a period piece
Yeah.
that is only 13 years removed from the period it's
Sure.
talking about. It's
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
not that often that we just go back a decade.
Yeah.
But
But like
yeah.
from 1987 to like 99 or 2000, that was kind of a seismic
Uh-huh.
change, I would say, like
Yeah.
geopolitically.
Yeah. This movie did not. I think it did fine monetarily, but critically, it was pretty mixed. There were a
Yeah.
lot of people who really, really did not find the humor in this movie or thought the humor was dull. And I do think some of it is a little ahead of its time.
Yeah,
I don't
I
know
agree.
really how to put my finger on that. Um,
Well,
yeah.
I remember watching it for the first time and expecting a horror film.
Hmm.
And I was like, oh, very little happens in this movie.
Hmm. Hmm.
Again, because the acts of violence that are so in Texas Chainsaw Massacre that are they're sucked right out.
Yeah.
You only see it's a character study.
Yeah.
And I remember getting to the end and I knew the book and I knew it's like the end of the book is like this is no exit and the sort of
Uh-huh.
non-ending ending. And then it gets to the movie and even still, I think what pissed people off the most is that the director was like, was it all in his head? Was some of it in his head? I don't know. You figure it out.
Yeah.
Peace. Later. And I think that really pissed people off because the 90s was the era of the twist ending. It was
Yes.
the Fight Club ending that everybody's like, oh, yes, we get a satisfying twist ending where they told us exactly what happened in a montage 10 minutes before the end of the film. Thank God. Now I can form my opinion. But this is like, I don't know. What do you think?
And speaking of no exit, like she went full Jean Paul Sartre,
Yeah.
absurdist circular logic sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it's I saw somebody recently, a few weeks ago on TikTok, kind of talking about this movie, saying like it's 100% true and objectively provable that this was all in his head, and he kind of breaks down
Sure.
the movie. And
Yeah.
I fully can see that point of view. I mean, I don't think it's objectively true,
I
but
think it's a truth. I mean,
it's a
as much as
truth.
like
Yeah.
you can point to any piece of art and go,
Yes.
that is true. These
Yes.
fictional, made up, make believe land is true. Sure.
Yes. And I think it just depends on like your point of view. And I have always been drawn toward the like that mid-century absurdist playwright, the Waiting for Godot sort of stuff,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
reading Camus, whoever else, and like all of those mid-century existentialist fuck shit stacks that were out there. I really love that stuff. And so to get the full catch 22 in this movie is great because it just puts us right back at the very beginning of the film
Yeah.
when you get to the end. And the whole idea is that it doesn't matter. The rich are going to
Yeah.
be protected. Ronald Reagan was always protected. Like the everything about that era and today too, but speaking specifically of the
Sure.
80s, there's it's no mistake that Mary Harron at the very near the end of the movie when they're watching the Reagan press conference, it's from Iran Contra.
Yeah.
And like none of these shitheads got any real punishment. Maybe a
No.
couple of the lower levels. Maybe Ollie North had to take some of it in the shorts,
That's
but
even
he
like,
was fine.
like Justin Theroux's character is like, oh, look at him. Like he's playing the kind of the old grandpa, but he's a killer underneath,
Yeah. And then cut to Patrick Bateman.
right?
Well, let's talk about this opening sequence.
Let's talk about food, Jeffrey. Let's talk about food that is so stupid,
I,
stupidly plated, like that doesn't that also somehow looks so fucking bland.
yeah. Yeah, it
Maybe it's
really
just
does.
because we're living in the era of like, I think social media and like The Bear and Top Chef and Chef's Table has kind of cracked this open to the public. But I'm like, that is some unseasoned salmon
Yes. It's all
meticulously plated
I
with
think
raspberries.
I think also like in the 21st century, we're pretty used to this type of like elevated cuisine
Right.
filtering down into more accessible cuisine.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, not that it's cheap, not that you could eat at like Dirt Candy every night, but like Dirt
Hmm.
Candy does not require months ahead for a reservation, and you really could get out of there for under $100.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying under $100 is a really cheap price, but I'm saying that's
But it's,
different when you're talking about Per Se or
yeah.
Alinea, where you're
Yeah.
not getting out of there for under 700.
Yeah. I worked at a restaurant once that was like a Michelin rated restaurant, not a Michelin
Uh-huh.
starred restaurant, but it was the whole thing was it was like where chefs would go to eat
Yes.
because it was like fine dining, accoutrement and trap, like all that sort of stuff, but in jeans,
Hmm.
and I was the one wearing the jeans. So I had to learn a lot of that shit kind of from the inside out, like how to do all this and like what. And it was interesting, like talking to the owners and the chefs about trends in food that would get like that would go down the ladder
Uh-huh.
essentially. Lava cake started off around this time as like the most decadent,
Yes, yes.
high class, and then it eventually goes down, and then it becomes like a chain restaurant thing, and then it becomes available at Applebee's.
Hmm.
Um, my boss would always like he was like the square plate. He's like, if you ever walk into a restaurant and they have square plates, just know you're going to be $10 overcharged for anything you eat.
Yeah, yeah. It's a
Because
square
that
plate.
was a thing that started off in these sort of like the restaurants in this movie where they're like, we're just going to make weird shit. We're going to
Uh-huh.
give you a menu in Braille. We're going to put the outlines of a fork and a knife, but not give you a fork and a
Oh,
knife.
I loved that one. That dessert that had the powdered sugar and it
Uh-huh.
had the outlines of the utensils on the plate.
Oh, I
And
love it.
so this opening sequence is, title sequence, the credits is a white backdrop and you just see red drops falling.
And
And
perfectly in time to the mute. Like the soundtrack also for the soundtrack for this movie slaps,
uh-huh.
which is amazing because they had to jump through so many fucking hoops because they literally said like most of the budget was just trying to get these songs. because nobody wanted their, especially Whitney Houston, did not want anything to do with this fucking movie.
Yeah, Whitney Houston, they have to use an instrumental track during the Whitney Houston
Hmm.
scene. Huey Lewis and Phil Collins were fine with it, though.
Yeah.
They were totally fine. All of the brands, though, are missing.
Yeah.
A
Like
couple of moments. There's a moment where he's dragging the giant camper bag
the
and
body bag. Yeah.
the body bag with Paul Allen's body, and Lewis Carruthers is like, "Oh my God, where did you get that away bag or whatever?" And he's like, "Jean-Paul Gaultier." And in the book, apparently it's something else, but Jean-Paul Gaultier, they were like, "That's fine, I don't care.
Yeah.
We
Of course, Jean-Paul
our
Gaultier, he's a freak.
our
You
bags can
know,
fit a body."
absolutely. God bless you, Jean-Paul Gaultier. But yeah, no, that was a big problem. The clothes were a big problem. Like the fact that Rolex could not be worn or mentioned by anybody
Uh-huh.
because they're like, oh, and then I think like the suit maker, I can't remember like the big like
Was
the
it
suit
Brooks? Was
maker.
it Brooks Brothers?
No, it was a more
Valentino?
yeah, I think it was Valentino was like, you can wear our suits, but not while you're killing anybody.
Yes. Interesting.
I like the way brands think about this shit, I think is fascinating and also so dumb. Because I'm
Yeah.
like, bitch, nobody paying attention to that.
No, no.
Nobody paying attention to that.
Well, as these blood droplets hit this white surface, you're like, oh, that's not blood.
It's
That
yeah.
it's like a
It's
coulis.
a raspberry coulis.
It's actually some type of reduction because they're plating duck, so
Yes.
it's probably cherry or raspberry reduction or some sauce. Anyways, very
But
good.
again,
Love
but
it.
again, like it cuts to this fine dining restaurant and it's the waiters doing the breakdown, like my squid ink ravioli. But the food somehow looks so ick. Like it's meticulously plated,
Uh-huh.
fussy,
Yes.
but somehow looks bland at the same time, is
It
my
looks
reaction to it.
very bland. It looks so
Like
bland.
this is pre-farm to table.
It really
This
is.
is like farm to American Express black card.
It really is like of an era wherein like dining is a way to separate yourself from the lower classes of
Yeah.
people, and it wasn't until the 2000s where we started making rustic foods more
Yeah.
fine dining types of
Yeah,
things.
like when Americana, the
Uh-huh.
sort of the classic Americana menus was like, "Hey, you can do this. Just bake a chicken.
Yeah.
Just give me a good chicken with some like root vegetables.
That's
Call it a
right.
day. Like season the chicken. That's all I ask. I don't care if you fucking julienne it. I don't care if it's on a nest of anything. Just give me a well-seasoned chicken."
Uh-huh. Well, we've got this fine dining establishment. The group that we kind of come back to all the time is Patrick Bateman.
Yeah.
We've got Timothy Bryce, played by Justin Theroux.
Yeah.
Somehow the second sexiest man in this movie.
I mean, it's hard to choose.
Uh-huh.
It's so hard to choose.
And we've got Josh Lucas as Craig
Yeah.
McDermott.
Yeah.
Bill Sage, who I'm less familiar with, as David Van
I mean,
Patten.
to put in perspective, like a factoid I saw about this movie is that like two out of these four have been Carrie Bradshaw's love interests on Sex and the City. So this is the level of hotness
Uh-huh.
of like male Hollywood hotness we're dealing with.
Yeah. Uh, there's also another man who's kind of outside of their circle who seems kind of like the hot young thing in the Wall Street world,
Hmm.
which is Paul Allen.
Somehow, like it's never explained why Paul Allen is like just got a little extra sparkle on him.
Yeah.
Like he always has the better apartment,
Hmm.
the better business card. It's never really it. Somehow he just he's they're all VPs,
Hmm.
all of them, but somehow Paul Allen is just a little bit extra.
Yeah.
Oh, and
He's
don't forget Lewis
and
Carruthers,
there's Lewis Carruthers.
the gay one,
Yep.
the only one who doesn't wear like the most boring clothes in the entire world.
Hmm. Hmm. Played by and has red hair too. Like
Yes.
it's played by Matt Ross from Silicon Valley.
Yep.
And many other things. But he's so funny because his hair is longer It's wavier. It's red. He wears a little bit
Yes.
more, not bright colors, but brighter
I mean,
colors in
like
his.
anything but like navy blue and a yellow tie, pretty
Yes.
much.
Yeah.
Anything other than that,
Yeah.
but still business appropriate.
Yeah. So between Lewis Carruthers and Paul Allen, you have these two different types of outsiders from this group.
I mean, it's the alpha and the omega in
Uh-huh.
the wolf pack pecking order.
Yes. The I also really enjoyed this, and I remembered this from the book too, which is Bateman is virtue signaling because
Yeah.
this early
Yes.
conversation
Yeah, like right out of the
McDermott
bat. Yeah.
right off the bat, like McDermott is just being anti-Semitic as fuck.
Yeah.
And
And even bad at it. Like, and that's the thing. It's like, I love it that Patrick Bateman, he's like, hey, let's cool it with the anti-Semitic. You don't spin a menorah.
I love that he was like spinning a menorah.
Like, so, like, these guys are so inept. They can't even racist right.
Later, when Timothy Bryce is like, "What about Sri Lanka with all the
I know, right?
Sikhs killing
With
the
the Sikhs and
Israelis?"
the what?
What?
In Sri Lanka? Okay, dude. But that I think that is like the satire of this movie is that these guys can only fail up,
Yes.
you know? Like, there's going to be a remake of this of not a remake. I refuse to call it a remake because it's going to be another interpretation of the book. Because as you said in your intro, David Cronenberg, Oliver Stone
Yeah.
would have made totally different versions, not of this movie, but of the book.
Yeah.
And then I think some people online were like, what if American Psycho, but a woman, which they did in American Psycho too?
Uh-huh.
What if American Psycho, but a person of color? And here's the thing, yeah, I don't think it'd work because these guys have to be like handsome, boring, fail up, rich white guys in order to get away with the shit that they get away with.
Yeah, because the point of the book isn't
At
that
least in the
he's
80s, at least in
yeah.
like 87.
Yeah. And the point of the book isn't necessarily like why are people psychos or let's look at the psycho stuff. We're trying to say like where is the fine line between being a psychopath and being one of these guys?
Yeah.
There's a
Yeah.
scene later in the movie where they are talking so hatefully about women. They're
Yeah.
doing the like what about a
There's no
girl with
such
a good
thing as a
person?
woman with a good personality.
Yeah. Or the only good personality in a woman is a woman who sucks my dick when I want her to, that sort of shit. And then Bateman quotes mass murderer Ed Gein,
Yeah.
saying that Ed Gein only had two thoughts when he saw a beautiful woman. One, what if I took her on a date and married her and lived a nice life? And two, what would her head look like on a stick? And all of the boys in his group go silent when he
Yeah.
says that. And it's such a telling moment because, wait, where's your line of demarcation of misogyny?
Yeah.
And I do think there's that. So it's exploring the problems of white, straight
Yeah.
men.
Yeah.
Although knowing Ellis, I don't know that he's limiting it just to straight men, uh, but still, like,
Rich.
I'm so
It's
curious
rich.
what you
So
would do
rich.
with that.
Like it's funny, like the two words in the title, like I think everybody focused on the psycho part and
Uh-huh.
forgot the American part.
That's such a great point. Yes, yes.
You know? Like, I mean, and not that this couldn't happen. I mean, like literally, I think of this the character, the psychopath from the Vanishing
Uh-huh.
could
Yes.
easily fit into this world, but in a very different, like in a less satirical way. But it's the
Mm.
same kind of thing of like this American psycho. What makes this psycho quintessentially American?
Yeah.
And what does that mean about our culture that we nurture,
Yeah.
foster, and whether these and if these murders actually did happen, brush this shit right under the rug, paint over it, and sell it and flip it on the market with the value.
Uh-huh. This is a movie very similar in some ways, tonally, but like it's similar to Fight Club in that it's a
Yeah.
film that is satirizing a certain type of behavior or
Yep.
person, particularly white men,
Yeah.
but it is I think a lot of people never quite understood that message and were more like interested in the violence and the twists. But unlike Fight Club, as you said earlier, this movie doesn't have the satisfying ending
Yeah.
if you're looking for the full twist of, oh, he was just crazy all along.
Yeah.
In American Psycho in the movie, well, in the book too, he's not the crazy one. The crazy one is the entire system
Yeah.
is fucked from top to
And
bottom.
we were talking kind of beforehand this like one of the things I remember from the book is being so confused at who actually is Patrick Bateman.
Uh-huh.
And this movie does that a bit. Like people call him Patrick, but oftentimes other characters, matter of fact, when Paul Allen gets introduced, he thinks Patrick Bateman is a completely different person. Matter of
Uh-huh.
fact, these four guys are like, oh, the very first scene, they're like, oh, do you see so and so over there? They're like, no, that's not so and so. He's over there.
Uh-huh.
That's somebody else, but they all look alike.
Yeah.
And that carries through to the very end, where even Patrick Bateman's lawyer doesn't even know who he is.
No.
And at no time does any kind of there's no way that Patrick or any of these guys can really correct anybody. Like, what
No.
does it matter? What does it really matter if you went to Yale or Harvard or Sarah Lawrence? What does it really matter? Because at the end of the day, you're all kind of like the same looking fish in the same school.
Hmm. One of the things I really loved about what Mary Harron did with this movie, and some of it is out of necessity because you do need to make this very long book very short into
Yes.
a film, but she eliminated any reference to Pat Bateman's family. And
Yeah.
and his brother, I think his name is Sean in the book, his younger brother who's like
That's the not
Bennington
less than
kid.
zero. It's rules of attraction, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Because
And he and I liked Sean Bateman's character in the book is amazing. His brother in the book is a really great character, but by getting away from his family, we remove all sense that he has any history or any
yeah,
he has no history.
yeah.
And I think that's even more interesting in the context of this movie because here's a man whose present is always cycling back on itself.
No. I mean, talk about perfect visual metaphor, is the we get introduced to Patrick Bateman and we get his skincare routine,
Hmm.
which is all about hydration, apparently.
Pore cleanser,
But
body
it's
scrub.
all like the six times the body scrubs and
Uh-huh.
the height, the face and the thing. But it's that like when I think of like visual metaphors, it's the pulling the translucent mask off his
Yes.
face is like quite possibly like I mean the violent stuff aside, like great, yeah, we know it's about a psychopath, but that is
Yeah.
the metaphor for this movie of you can just peel your face off. And I can't remember what he's saying, but he's like, your concept of Patrick Bateman is only skin deep. If you peel it
Yeah.
back, there's nothing there.
Yeah. His line is, I am simply not there.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. He is, yeah. And he mentions that a few times in different ways in this movie about saying, like, I have all of the physical features of a human being, but
Hmm.
I experience no conceivable emotions other than, I forget what it was, like anger,
Disgust,
disgust, and
like rage and disgust,
disgust. Yeah.
greed,
Greed.
greed and
That's it.
disgust.
That's it. He oftentimes he's got his headphones on a lot during this movie. Like
Yeah.
he's disconnected from society. The only way he can participate in society is to try and what he thinks is fit in. He said at one point in
Yes.
time, his
I only want to
fiance
fit in.
Evelyn was like, "Why do you stay at the job you hate your job?" And he's like, "Because I want to fit in."
Fit in with who, Patrick? Fit in with who?
A okay, so Chloe Sevigny plays
Oh,
his
fucking
secretary
snaps.
Jean.
Fucking snaps to Chloe Sevigny.
She's so good, and Reese Witherspoon
Fucking
is
snaps to
his
Reese Witherspoon.
fiance. I got some of I've mentioned this definitely on a couple of the previous episodes, but like the podcast "What Went Wrong," they mention I when I listened to their episode on American Psycho, I was source for some of that info that I gave you earlier. They mentioned something about Reese Witherspoon. They're like, I miss when Reese Witherspoon did weird fucking parts in movies.
Yeah.
And listen, Reese Witherspoon is great in almost everything she's in that I can think
Well,
of.
now she's producing shit, so
And
she's
she's
fine. She's
producing,
making
but
the decisions.
and I love her for that. I want her to
But
do
yeah,
anything that
she
makes
was.
her happy.
She was a weirdo. She
Yeah.
was like the pretty girl who could also make, like, who could also pull a face.
Yes.
You know, like the
Yeah.
pretty girl who was like not afraid to get goofy.
Yeah, it feels like Amy Sedaris, but like sanded down for the mainstream.
Yeah.
And yeah, I really like that. One of the through lines of the book and the movie is I need reservations. I'm not
Oh
eating at a
God.
restaurant without reservations.
Yep.
And his whole job when he gets to work on this first scene that we see him in his office, the first thing he asks Gene is, I need a reservation for lunch. I need a
Yep.
reservation tonight for dinner.
Yep.
Don't wear that outfit. Again, you're prettier than that. High heels. I
Yes.
like high heels. And then he sits down at his desk in this office with no artwork on the wall, no
Nope.
papers on the desk, no
Nope.
typewriter, no computer, no books, and he just watches Jeopardy.
Now, that's actually, he does have one book,
Oh, wait, what
The
is.
Art of the Deal
Oh,
by
no, I
Donald
missed that.
Trump.
Oh,
I
God.
think it's like you see it later in the scene, like when he's being interrogated by Willem Dafoe, but he has one book,
Uh-huh.
The Art of the Deal by Donald Trump.
I did not clock that. They go to, he goes to dinner with Evelyn and a bunch of other couples, including like Evelyn's like
Yeah.
artist niece
Oh
and
my
her
God. Who's
boyfriend.
like, oh look, my friend from The Cure. And
Yes.
it's interesting because they have no like I think like the sort of goth girl has one line and she, they're kind of talking about like, oh, do you think Manhattan's becoming like over um like not gentrified, they don't use the word
Uh-huh.
gentrified, but like over capitalized or marketed or something like that.
Uh-huh.
They're like, these things actually affect us, which like I think a beautiful pairing of this movie and then After Hours, which is
Oh,
kind of a
yeah.
look at the
Yeah.
80s in the middle of the 80s and then a look at the 80s like 15 years removed, 20 almost
Hmm.
20 years removed from the 80s, because her line of like these things actually affect us. Like you get the idea that the clubs they're going to, gay clubs, queer clubs,
Hmm.
drag queens working the door, club kids dancing in angel wings, like the musicians, the things that make a city interesting and exciting are being pushed out
Yeah.
for these dudes.
Because outsider, queer people, people of color, artists
Yeah.
have made communities all over New York
Yeah.
City and any city, but like talking about Manhattan and New York City in particular. And then just like with Harlem, just like
Yeah.
with Brooklyn, just
With
like with the
Soho.
East
I mean,
East
like,
Village and Soho, you get these sharks, these vultures from Wall
yeah.
Street who move in because it's cool.
Yeah.
So,
And also because there's a lot of cheap real estate
yes.
because, the money is right.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is like, that's the thing is like a $50 tip to the drag queen will get you into anywhere.
Yeah. And the capital of cool that was built by the lower classes and the outsiders and the fringe, that was all built up by them, and they get no money for that.
Right.
They don't get paid by the real estate moguls and whoever else. So yeah, it's a great line. These artist people don't have much going on line wise in this movie, but that
Yeah.
one line she says hits fully. It says
Yeah.
everything. So Patrick Bateman mentions that he's like, I'm pretty sure that Timothy Bryce and my fiance Evelyn are having an affair, which is
Mhm.
fine because I'm having an affair with her friend Courtney, who's dating Lewis Carruthers.
Yeah. Engaged to be married to Louis Carruthers.
Yes. And I think
Oh,
he's
Court.
engaged to be married to Evelyn because they have a whole
Yes.
conversation in the cab.
Like in which she's planning the wedding with like must have Godiva truffles for every, like that.
So Annie Leibovitz
Courtney.
should do the
Oh
photography. I
my, of
forget. Yeah.
course, of course. Like to me, Courtney is a really interesting character because she is the most Bret Easton Ellis character
She is a
to
leftover
me.
from like Less Than Zero, right? Like
Yeah,
this is,
like to me, she's very much the the tragic like sensitive but rich, so rich that they have to like turn to drugs because their world of self-hate is just never going to
Mhm.
fulfill them. Like that to me, like I mean, it's like I think this is a really beautiful portrayal of that. It's like you either become a Patrick Bateman or you become a Courtney, and or you're happily chuckling along,
Yeah. Yes.
doing the dance.
Yes. Uh, so we're gonna meet Courtney. There's a moment where he calls Courtney. They set up the scene. They do this twice in the movie. There's an audio joke in the movie twice, and it's the first time we do it is here, wherein you don't see fully what's happening. You see like body parts moving, but it's abstracted. You're not sure what's happening, and you hear sexual moaning. So you
Yeah,
think you're getting a sex scene, and what you see is Pat Bateman just doing his crunches and lunges
yeah,
and exercises while there's porn on in the
yeah.
background. And the porn is
Like,
called Inside Lydia's Ass.
oh my God. Like, it's like porn. His soundtracks are one, porn,
Uh-huh.
two, horror movies,
Uh-huh.
three, the most banal top 10 hits.
Yes.
Stop, end list.
Uh-huh. The second time that joke is repeated, it's done again wherein after we've sort of seen him murdering people,
Yeah,
we hear the screaming and we think we're about to see a murder scene.
yeah.
And what it is him
Working out,
exercising
doing those fucking thousand crunches.
to Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah.
This is where we get this ongoing joke about trying to get a reservation at Dorsia. All I could
Oh my
think
God.
about was I don't know if you've ever seen L.A. Story.
It's
The
been a
Steve
long time since I've seen LA Story.
It's a mid 80s Steve Martin comedy. Again, very Catch 22, very
Yeah.
circular, absurdist. But the restaurant in that is Lidio, which is L apostrophe idiot,
Oh
but
my
pronounced
God. I love
Lidio.
it.
But they have the same scene in that movie that they have here, which is he calls the
Getting the
restaurant.
reservation.
I'd like to make a reservation for two at say like 7:30, and you just hear cackling on the other
Oh my
end of the
God, I love it.
phone.
I mean, it's so the Dorsia, and then it's also like, like we see the title of his like, it looks like Escape, but they're like, here we are at Espace, or like,
Yes, yes.
it's this impronounceable word. You're like, what? Okay, okay, here we go.
He actually says when they go to Espas, I was on the verge of tears as we entered Espas because I was worried we wouldn't have a decent table.
Oh no,
Oh my God.
oh no,
Courtney's so interesting because, as you said, like her way of dealing with the world in which she's in, rather than constantly run up this hill like everyone else, is to just tumble down it, right?
yeah, yeah,
She's on
to be a
lithium.
beautiful
She's on,
tragic mess.
yeah. And Lewis is always gone. And we
Yeah,
sort of
because
probably,
well, he has a nightlife of his own.
yes. And everyone in this group, I thought this was a really interesting, that Lewis is a gay character in a lot of ways. You could really single out that gay character.
Yeah.
I mean, this movie avoids showing any gay romances that he has.
Oh no.
However,
Yeah, no, no.
but he's the same as everyone else.
Yeah.
It's sort of an equalizing force for gay men in the 80s. Like in some
That's
ways,
it.
like we're just like you.
Yeah, pretty much.
But
And it's funny because Patrick Bateman describes Lewis as being, a doofus, an idiot.
mhm,
Like he never actually says the word,
no. They
but
call everyone else that in the movie. They
yeah,
call everyone else the F slur.
yeah,
They never say it about Lewis. Lewis is just a dork. He's a nerd. He's a
yeah.
whatever.
But they all know. They know
They all
exactly what's
know.
going on.
Yeah. But it's interesting because of the way that they use the F slur in this movie so frequently.
Right.
It's used as a point of aggression rather than an actual name that
Exactly.
names
Just
something specific.
just like the anti-Semitic remark in the beginning, it's less about that person. It doesn't matter if that person is Jewish or not. It's that is like a label we can just throw on anybody
Hmm.
to be like, oh, less than us.
Yeah. Paul, okay, so we get to the famous business card scene,
Oh,
and this is wherein Paul Allen shows up for the first time and starts
looks
talking to
just like
Patrick.
who looks dressed just like this is like a who wore it best. And I have to say, honestly, sorry, Jared Leto, Christian Bale wore it better.
Christian Bale wears everything best in this movie.
Well,
He looks
it's the
so
thing.
good.
I think it's like because Jared Leto's a little bit like smaller, a little more compact
Yes.
than
He's
Patrick Bateman.
more boyish looking.
Yeah, the sort of the and we go into the thing of like Patrick Bateman, like he has the same uh, Van Peebles eyewear, the same suit, the same we go to the same barber, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But there's something about like it does seem like a little like mini me version
Yeah.
on Paul Allen.
Yeah. And he also looks a lot more like the boy next door type of look. Like he's so
Sure.
like doe-eyed, and
Yeah, yeah,
he
yeah.
still is so boyish, and there's something about there's a wunderkind sort of thing
Yeah.
to his appearance. So they have the business card exchange, which we've all, I think, seen
Ugh.
or at least aware of the scene. It's so beautiful.
How many ways can you describe the term the color white?
Oh my God, eggshell, pale nimbus.
Yeah.
We have an off-white.
Yeah.
Oh God,
It's
I wanted to
so,
say
but
cerulean, but that's not the word.
no, no, no.
Cerulean is sky blue. Anyways, yes,
But it's like
bromelian
there's,
type,
oh my
raised
God.
lettering.
The raised lettering, they're like, oh, I've got this one. And then I love that, of course, Lewis Carruthers is the only one who has like gold face on his type, like, ugh,
Yes.
how gauche.
I think my favorite phrase in the scene is a tasteful thickness.
Oh
Such a
God.
good phrase.
I read a factoid that the sound cue is actually when they pull the
Uh-huh.
card out is actually the sound of a sword being unsheathed in slow
Oh,
motion.
yes.
Like they're pulling out their sword.
That's so
Look
beautiful.
at my sword.
So beautiful.
It's a
Yeah, this
tasteful
like
thickness.
yeah, this dick measuring contest is amazing. And the thing that's most interesting is that Patrick is always a little bit more extreme in his reaction to these things. Just
Yeah,
like the Ed Gein joke where he pushed,
yeah.
we were just talking about how much we hate women, but the moment you threw violence into
I
it,
know.
like even though everything we're talking about
You
is a
made it
form
too
of
real, man.
violence. Yeah.
You put your actual like one you referenced an actual person,
Yes.
and two you made it violent,
Yeah.
as
And
opposed to implying violence.
and here everyone, every man at this table but Patrick is internalizing their stress,
Yeah,
and Patrick is externalizing it by sweating
yeah.
profusely during the scene. All of his posturing, all of his, virtue signaling, because when he speaks aloud about a big issue, it
Oh
is,
God. Sound bites.
it's empty, but thoughtful, right? It sounds thoughtful, but it's empty. That's what I'm trying to say.
What's it's like bumper sticker soundbite. We are the world politics of like, yeah, we should feed the homeless.
Yeah,
We should feed the homeless. We should elevate humanity. Like things that you're
yeah,
like,
we should end racism and blah blah blah.
uh-huh.
Yeah.
But that was I mean, God, it's like the era that was defined by the we are the world. Let's get a bunch of like super millionaire rock stars
Mhm.
together.
Do they know it's Christmas time
Do
at
they?
all?
Do they know? When
But
Phil Collins got on a jet plane and performed at two, I think, Band Aid concerts in the same 24-hour period on his PJ.
well, Pat Bateman is in the street one night and he stops to
How does
talk to
Pat, yeah, how does he feel about
homeless
homeless
men.
people specifically rather than in general?
Uh-huh. And he starts with, here, you want some money, gives him some money, then leans down. It's like, hey, man, why don't you get a job? Are you drinking? Are you drunk? Is that's what's causing? And he gets more and more like punchy and vicious towards this guy. What's your name? Oh, my name's Al. Get a goddamn job, Al. I'm gonna help you. Oh, thank you, sir. Wait, you stink. Sorry, Al. I don't have anything in common with you. Opens up his briefcase, takes out a knife. This is, I think, the only like full shot we see of him murdering someone.
I think
Like
so.
where
Yeah.
we see like it's not a
Yeah.
close-up penetration, but it's a medium
Everything else is either
shot.
obscured or it happens off camera or it happens below camera.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even this, it's pretty, it's in the dark.
Uh-huh.
It's not, this is not the Fountains of Blood that is a Lucio Fulci movie. As
Nope.
a Mario, it's not that.
The violence, the really extreme violence here is a really wide overhead. Like in today's day and age, it would be a drone shot, but this is a ladder
Yeah.
shot
Yeah.
of a crane shot of him like stomping his body.
Stomping that dog.
Oh yeah, and stomping the dog too. Um, and then it cuts right to him getting a facial treatment and a manicure.
Yes.
So he takes Paul Allen out to dinner. We should have dinner. Paul still thinks his name is Marcus Halberstram.
Hmm.
And so Patrick, as Paul Allen, makes reservations at kind of just a middle of a three-star Mexican restaurant, a place
Well,
that,
no, it's not that. It's the restaurant that used to be hip.
right. Yes, yes.
Like
That's a
it's the
better way of putting it.
restaurant that like maybe was in a year ago, but now no one eats here anymore.
No. And Paul is disgusted by the whole thing.
Yeah.
We should have gone to Dorsia. I could have gotten us reservations.
I don't think Dorsey is a real place.
I don't think
I
in the
think
book it is,
I'm sure. No, I'm sure it is.
but
I mean,
yeah.
clearly, but I think this idea, like the way they all bandy about the let's get into Dorsia,
Uh,
I don't think any of them have. I don't think
no,
any of them have gone.
nope. No, and the one time we quote go to Dorsia is
Oh
when
no, it's not. Yeah.
Patrick takes Courtney out and she's so
Yeah.
lithiumed up that she can
Tells her you're like we're at Dorsia and the menu says like Barracuda or whatever
yeah,
it is.
Arcadia or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then again when he tries to take when Gene is like, let's go to Dorsia. We saw how that one goes
Uh-huh.
when a little dose of reality gets injected into the Patrick Bateman scheme.
Mm-hmm. So he gets Paul so drunk at this place, and then they go back to his apartment. So again, another famous scene here where Paul is so drunk and he's staring at the floor and it's covered in newspaper. He's like, "Hey, Patrick, why is your floor covered with the style section? You have
I
a
know.
dog
And like all the furniture's covered.
in plastic."
Now, I think this is brilliant. This is a brilliant example of like book to film adaptation, like the
Mm-hmm.
true art of adaptation,
Mm-hmm.
which is much of the dialogue is straight from the book. But how do you get these interstitial chapters, apropos of nothing in the book, that are just 5-page descriptions of a Phil Collins album, of a Huey Lewis album? And I
Yes.
think the choice to make it a monologue while Patrick is kind of like juicing himself up to either fuck or kill or both.
Uh-huh.
Perfect.
These they incorporated these so well. They're one of my I think my favorite part of the book when you will read like the most vile, horrible
Yeah.
torture scene, and then it cuts to Huey Lewis and Huey
Yeah,
Lewis and
like
the
it's
news broke
yeah,
onto the scene with 1982's whatever.
because it's not from a point of view. It
No.
sounds like a really tepid Rolling Stone review.
Yes.
So it's not in Patrick Bateman's voice. He's not talking about I like Huey Lewis and the news, which they kind of changed that by having to have an actor actually say the words.
Uh-huh.
But in the book, it's just here's a review.
And
Here's a description of
and
this album.
and I think by having Patrick Bateman deliver these lines, which in the book he kind of is because it's all a tell-all,
Sure.
but either way, the voice, as you said, isn't Patrick Bateman's voice. It is regurgitated from him reading
Yep.
Rolling Stone
Yep.
articles.
Yep.
And he knows that Genesis was a little too brainy. It wasn't
Yeah.
until Phil Collins took the lead that they became more accessible, and it
Yep.
helped explain all of the earlier Genesis work. And I'm like, there's no way he thought this. He can't
Well,
synthesize that info. Someone in Rolling Stone
has to
explained
tell
that.
him. And
And
it's
now,
the same thing about the food.
yeah.
It's like when they're like, oh, when I think it's Paul Allen is like throwing a hissy fit because the like sea urchin gumbo is the only reason anybody would come here, which bleh, that's not, bleh. No, thank you. Because it's like this is the soundbite that's been given to them by Zagat's, by Michelin, by New
Hmm.
York Times, by New Yorker. This is the only, this is the thing that
Yeah.
we have to have an opinion about. So what I find interesting, I discovered this upon this watching. So we have this. This first one is a lengthy, the, the long and the short of Huey Lewis and the News.
Hmm.
And what's interesting is later, like an hour later, when Donald Kimball brings out his Huey Lewis and he's like, "Hey, do you like Huey Lewis and the News?" Patrick Bateman says, "Yeah, I never really got into them. They're too black sounding."
Hmm.
So his favorite album, he doesn't even like. He listens to music he doesn't like.
Or he's a form of code switching, whereas in front of
Yeah,
the cop, I don't want to fit in.
yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
don't, or I don't want to connect with this man on any personal level.
Oh, I can see that.
So I'm
Like, oh,
distancing
you like that?
myself.
He's got to come up with some reason not to like it. And his default is
To black
they're too
sounding.
black, too Jewish, too gay, too whatever.
Yes.
Yeah.
The other take on that that I would have is that he also, because this music is so closely related to his murdering people,
Yeah, a
he
little too
just
on the
cannot
nose.
let you inside
Oh,
that sort of thing.
I guess
Um,
because he even said like when Donald Kimball's like, "Have you ever heard?" I think it's like, "Have you ever heard of Huey Lewis?" He's like, "Never even heard of them." Like
yeah.
the like, I'm lying so far in the opposite direction. You're like, "Wait, what?
Uh-huh.
Huh?"
Well, he's got Paul Allen at his place. He's explaining Huey Lewis in the news. The whole time he's putting on this raincoat and black
A fucking
gloves
raincoat.
and
That look is hot though. That look is fucking hot with the translucent, so you can see the suit underneath, but it's kind of
mhm,
again, that shit's fucking hot. I
it's
love
so
it.
good. He chose Christian Bale as he's entering the room and
I know,
talking
right?
about Huey Lewis in the news, moonwalks behind Paul Allen.
Well, because he's holding the axe to his side, so he has
But
to stay in profile.
yeah, but rather than like walk forward in profile, he
Yeah.
moonwalks, and it's such a crazy choice, and
It's that. It's
it just solidify. I think it's what anchors this scene, right? It is
yeah.
the
It's
wax
that. It's
seal on
also
the
when he does
envelope.
the like the wiggle across. Like it's
Huh?
so bananas, and it's like famously, Christian Bale said he kind of based Patrick Bateman on the Tom Cruise Oprah
Mm-hmm.
interview. That is how just maliciously joyous,
Yeah.
manic.
Uh-huh.
Like a too big smile with nothing behind the eyes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's indicating fun
Uh-huh.
in a way that is immediately recognizable to any like empathetic human being because you're like, you are not having fun. You're trying to get me to think you're having fun, and it's failing.
Yeah. Well, he finally swings the axe down. He's like, "Hey, Paul." Jared Leto turns around, looks surprised. Um, Jared Leto did not know that Christian Bale was going to be standing behind him with the axe above his head.
Oh shit.
Because normally in a shot like that, you don't need Christian Bale there.
Yeah.
So his wide eyes is actually a real reaction. And he brings the axe down, and we get this blood splatter Christian Bale's face. It falls so perfectly, like half and half,
Yeah.
like a mask, two
Like a
sides.
half mask. Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, the idea of masks. The
Hmm.
masks we put on in public or in private, as the
Yes.
Billy Joel song says.
Yep. He drags him out in his overnight bag. Lewis spots him. Oh, where'd you get that overnight bag?
So this is where the mystery of this movie becomes, the are the murders real? Are they not? I love that there's like he's just leaving a blood streak through the lobby of his apartment
Uh-huh.
building. They have a doorman. The doorman looks up, has no reaction, which is the interesting thing of like, if the murders are all in his head, cool. But there is a thing of like these like Patrick Bateman could get away
Uh-huh.
with leaving a snail trail of blood,
Uh-huh.
and his doorman is paid to not comment.
Yeah.
So absurd?
I mean,
Not
yeah.
absurd? Absurd? Real?
Yeah.
Same, same.
I go back to I think you phrased it best when you said like we pay too much attention to the word psycho and not enough attention to the word American in the
Yeah,
title. And I think
yeah.
whether or not he did it to me has never been a really interesting question. What's a really interesting question to me is like
Why?
well, yeah,
Why?
not why,
How?
but like in what ways does do these thoughts exist
Yeah,
in us?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And what is it, where does it come from and what do we do with it?
Yeah,
And we have a system that if you are high up enough in your class and in your, protected race or gender status, uh, you are required to do less work for your money. You're required to do less effort for your relationships, and the world will protect you, a la
yeah.
Ronald Reagan and
As
Iran-Contra.
long as long as you wear the right clothes, say the right things,
Mhm.
like you have to do the external things,
Yep.
but on the inside, you can be a rotting piece of flesh, and that's okay.
So I think Mary Herron just sort of she made it deliberately nebulous whether or not he did
Yeah.
it, because not because she wants you to like it's up to the viewer
It's a
to
think piece.
decide.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no, I think she did that because she was like it's not important whether he did it.
Yeah.
What's important is the fact that he thinks about doing it.
Yeah. To him, it's real.
Yes.
That's the
And that's
important.
all
To
that
the character, it's real.
yeah. So he's he kind of stages a whole thing in Paul's apartment. He's disgusted that Paul's apartment is
I
so
know.
much
Dude,
nicer.
I mean, apartment corner view overlooking the Guggenheim. Hello.
Fuck. It's a nice place.
That is the place. That's
Yeah.
like, you know who has that apartment? Like the fucking Vogue editor lady.
Yeah.
Like that's what we're talking about. Like the top of the top.
And you'll also note too the walls and the molding in this place suggest this is an older building.
Yeah.
He lives in an older he's more a part of the city at that
It's
point.
old money versus new money.
And Patrick Bateman's apartment is
Is on the west
Florida's
side.
Florida's West Side,
Yeah.
Florida ceiling windows and
Yeah.
stark bright white lighting and
Yeah.
marble tops, marble countertops, etc. So it is
It's
a new
screaming wealth rather than whispering wealth.
it's screaming condo versus co-op
Yeah.
is what it is. And he's got a fancy new condo and as opposed to
And he's
as
made it look and he's made it look like MoMA rather than making it look like, I don't know, something that has been handed down generation after generation after
correct.
generation.
Correct. Yeah.
Which explains why Paul Allen is always just a leg up.
Yeah.
Always just a leg up.
Mm-hmm. All right, we're gonna meet Detective Kimball, played by Willem Dafoe.
Again, this is peak Willem Dafoe. I mean, like, love Willem Dafoe from beginning to end, soup to
Uh-huh.
nuts, changing light bulbs at Worcester Group through Aquaman. Love it. But this is peak Willem Dafoe right here.
So good.
There's something about just his face on screen next to these gorgeous, like, I mean, they're all very unique looking individual actors that are all gorgeous, but there's something about William Dafoe that is still a character actor,
Uh-huh.
which says outsider.
Yeah. Yeah.
Handsome in a character actor way rather than in a leading man way
Mm-hmm.
that screams not our kind.
Yeah. Because Willem Dafoe is a very different type of hot, like a very
Yeah.
different type of attractive.
Yeah.
He's grizzled and weird looking,
Yeah.
and but
He's
like,
he's like a Fellini movie hot.
yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah,
in
yeah.
which oddness, uniqueness is celebrated
Mm-hmm.
in a way that's like painterly because you're like, oh my God, I can't wait to see how the light is going to fall on his face and it
Mm-hmm.
moves from one reaction to another. Like when fucking William Dafoe smiles, it's like you feel like you've been hit with a laser beam,
Yeah.
not because you're swooning Leonardo DiCaprio, Patrick, like, or Christian Bale in love with a puppy dog genericness, but because you're in love with a truly unique person. Steve
Yeah.
Buscemi, like
Yes.
that
Yes.
era of character actor is like hard to define. Like we have them now, but we're sort of blurring the lines a little bit. Everybody's getting a little TikTok
Uh-huh.
averaged out these
Yep.
days. Everybody's being a little face tuned.
Uh-huh. Well, I think one of the more famous production notes from in modern film is this scene with Willem Dafoe, and Mary Harron had him
Do it
shoot
three
it
ways.
3 ways, and they shot the scene first way. You think Patrick Bateman is innocent. Second way, you think he's guilty.
Yep.
Third, you're just not certain. You really
Neutral.
are sizing him up.
Neutral.
Yeah. Because
And then
yeah.
intercut. And once you know that and watch this thing, you can literally tell which specific cuts
Uh-huh.
kind of go to which take.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's great. I love that she jumbled this up. It goes back to the question of did he really do the killings or not? The
Mm,
point is that it's all jumbled up. Like
yeah.
it's she's trying to diffuse that question, and unfortunately
Yeah.
people are just asking that question like, "Ooh, does he know whatever?" And I'm like, it doesn't matter because
Doesn't
in the
matter.
end it is catch 22. It's all going to
The
come full
detail, like the
circle.
facts, not important.
No. No, so unimportant.
Like where were you on what night? Which restaurant were you with Bill? Were you with Tim? Or it doesn't, because they're all fucking interchangeable anyway.
Yeah, it does
Like,
not matter.
and I love how like it's the one we get to see a little bit more of Patrick Bateman's work life, which is non-existent.
Uh,
Like the fake phone call giving a fake friend advice about how to tip a salon worker. Don't
hmm
tip the owner, tip the worker, how to tie a perfect Windsor knot.
Yep.
And then Donald Kimball's like, oh, important work stuff. He's like, oh, just gossip.
So good.
That's what you do when you're that rich. You just spread gossip. Influencing.
hmm It's uh let's get back because we kind of talked through all that. So he goes to pick up a sex worker on the street in a limo, and this is
Christy.
Christy. We
Quote,
actually,
quote,
yeah,
quote,
we never actually
Christy.
learn her name because he says your name is Christy. That's you only go by that name. And
God, this actress as well. Like again, Cara Seymour, like again, a perfect
mhm.
example of someone who is like a true character actor that's like uniquely gorgeous,
hmm
but not of this world.
Yes. Yeah. You're
Like,
100% correct.
like this is a person like she's got like and Patrick's like, oh, you have a great body. She does have a great body. You have a you're we see her in the bathtub and like gorgeous
hmm
in a natural, unaffected kind of way versus I think later when we see him picking up the models in a sort of Christy Brinkley, teased up hair,
Uh-huh.
uptown girl kind of way.
Uh-huh.
But there's something about Cara Seymour that I heard that this role was actually kind of written for her because she
Okay.
knew, I think the writer or the director, one of the two.
Yeah.
Well, you can tell like this is a like sh her thoughts are written on her face
Yeah.
about this whole scenario from top to bottom.
Yeah. I think she is friends with Guinevere Turner, who is the co-writer with Mary Harron of
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
script. And Guinevere Turner plays Elizabeth
Yes.
later in the movie.
The,
It's
the
so
the
good.
Sarah Lawrence not a
Yes.
lesbian.
Yes. Okay. So
It's like
he,
here's $50, come back with me.
yeah,
Come back to my apartment. I'm not supposed to, but
he gives
for
her
the
a
right
little,
amount of money I will.
yeah. And in the car, he uses his car phone or like mobile, big, thick brick phone to call another service. He's like,
An
I want a
escort
girl,
service.
early 20s, blonde, who does couples. I cannot emphasize enough that she be blonde.
I know. It's this is the like he takes her home,
hmm
um, makes her bathe
hmm
in this gorgeous bath,
hmm
makes her wash her vagina.
hmm
No, no, not like that. So, hands and knees. And like again, you could just see on this fucking woman's face, like, okay, okay, doing this for the money. Like you can see me like doing it for the money, doing it for the money.
Yeah.
Like, don't have an opinion. Don't keep your mouth shut.
Yeah.
Use any of the robes, not the whatever, what I don't even fucking know what brand name robe.
Yeah. He
Like
said that.
which
Yeah.
robe that is, how would you know? Like again, it's not the don't use the blue one, that's mine. It's
Uh-huh.
don't use the Versace or whatever.
Yeah.
Oh,
So,
okay. How would I know which one that is? Sure.
so the other woman arrives and he names her Sabrina. You're not quite blonde, are
Not
you?
more a dirty blonde.
hmm
Oh,
He has them sitting down in the living room with him, and he's like, "Gee, don't you want to know what I do?" No, not really.
No,
Well, I work on Wall Street at Pierce and Pierce. Heard of it? And I
no.
love this because Christy is like, "You have a really nice place here, Paul."
Yeah,
Like, just she knows what he's doing. Like,
yeah.
here's a man who needs to be soothed and
Hmm.
petted and
Yeah.
played with, and
Ego stroked a
ego
little bit.
stroked. Yep. And then he keeps telling Christy, "That's a very fine Chardonnay that you're not drinking." Uh, hey, do you like Phil Collins?
Oh my God. It's not even that. It's like, it's just like the perfect, like, full, like, boom, Phil Collins face.
Yeah, he's got the CD
Oh,
right up at the
I
camera. Yep.
love it. And it's to me like these interludes, these like musical interludes are it's kind of it's his foreplay. It's
Yeah.
his fluff. It's him getting ready, which is kind of now indicated into like, okay, Christy is the girl in white. Again, so porn. Like we've got the good girl, we've got the bad girl in the black negligee, the white negligee, the
Uh-huh.
little white gloves. Like this is like Fredericks of Hollywood style of sexy that was kind of like 80s, the like more is more, you
Yeah.
know? Like we got to like doll it up a little bit, tart it up, like more bows, more frills, more lace, rather than I think, we've now kind of been like more like streamlined sexuality or fetishized, like fetish is like not even enter into the picture as much before that
Yeah.
became a thing.
I like that he's got this camera set up to make them do these things. He it's so it's so ridiculous. It's so over the top. He's like, Christy, take off your robe. Sabrina, do a little dance. Stare at her ass, Sabrina. Don't just stare at it, eat it. Like just this
Like she's
just
supposed to know. Well,
yeah.
that's the thing throughout. Like from the moment he picks up Christie, throughout, it's sort of that negging point of view of like you should already know what I want.
Uh-huh.
Everything is the like telling you what to do and making you feel bad for not having already done it.
Yeah. Yeah. He also makes a really strong point to tell them his name is Paul Allen over and
Yes.
over again.
But it's also like a plot point, but also like he's trying to like in his mind he's trying to like build an alibi slash be Paul Allen.
Yeah, I think they're both. I think it's both because by the end of the movie, you realize he's been putting all of his body parts in Paul Allen's
Hmm.
place. So he is trying to frame some kind of scenario around Paul Allen.
And I do kind of remember that being a difference in the book. Like, if I remember right, like Patrick Bateman's living space gets ganasty
Hmm.
by because he keeps everything in like, and I remember him being very affected by his living space, like his deteriorates as his mental status deteriorates.
Hmm.
But in this, they make a demarked kind of idea of putting all of the victims at Paul Allen. So he's now kind of living a double life.
Hmm.
There's the like clean Patrick Bateman and the dirty Paul Allen.
Yeah. And then later that night, the girls are trying to go, and he's like, "We're not through yet." And all we see is him pull
Yep.
open a drawer full of surgical tools
And coat hangers
and
and like just,
scalpels and scissors and
yeah.
then the next thing we see is them leaving. He's
Yep.
giving them the rest of their money. They both have like bloody noses and
Yeah.
bruises as they're
Like quote, Sabrina can't even look him in the eye.
yeah.
Like again, it's like I think the thing that makes this movie not as popular, not as mainstream as a Fight Club, is that it's more implicit than explicit.
Yeah.
You don't get to watch him beat the shit out of these women and then send them home. You just see him sending them home and you see their emotional reaction to
Hmm.
what happened
Yeah.
rather than the action itself, which is, I mean, not more or less interesting. It's just a point of view that is really unique.
It denies you, and I'm glad that it does. It denies you the violence that you
Yeah.
get with to bring it back to Fight Club, right? Like
Yeah.
Fight Club, you get to see the violence. And Fight Club is less violence against women. I think it would be really hard to show this type of violence against women and still keep your sense of it being a comedy. Like you could,
Right.
I
Well,
would
it
fully
would be a horror.
understand.
It'd be
Yeah,
full horror at that
yeah,
point. If this was an Oliver Stone, David Cronenberg, or
yeah, yeah.
you'd be like, okay, which listen, the book is brutal, so brutal.
Mm-hmm.
Like you pick a thread and you follow that thread. That is
Mm-hmm.
like the book, like you said, it is stomach churning.
Yeah.
But there's something about reading about a thing and then witnessing an interpretation of that thing visually that
Mm-hmm.
at a certain point you're like, okay, what are we even doing here? Is this Solo 100 Days of Sodom? Like,
Yeah, yeah,
are we going like sometimes like you can see something less than think about it,
yeah.
if that makes any sense.
Yeah, and then and she is playing this Mary Harron. I think my interpretation is she's playing this thing of like the important thing in the book is not what he did. The important
Yeah.
thing is who he is.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a reversal of what I think we would normally say about a person in fiction, which is
Yeah. Yeah.
you are what you do.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you strip away what you do, there's still a who you are. And who
Yeah.
and so she is playing with this fine line of like we can clearly see the difference between torturing and dissecting and murdering women in your apartment and being an absolute maniacal, misogynist, racist,
Right.
anti-Semite on Wall Street who's destroying neighborhoods.
Yeah.
But where's the line? It's not about the behavior. At the heart of it, these are horrible people.
Yeah.
The end. That's and
That's
so
the
when you strip away the violence from these scenes, it also does that too. It just reminds you you don't need to see this to know he is bad.
no. Well, you don't see him work, but you know
No.
what he does. You
Yep.
don't see him kill, but like it's the same
Yep.
thing. Like you don't see them make the money, you just see them enjoy the money. You don't
Hmm.
see him hurt anybody until we get to the fantasy sequence, which I think that is the one sequence that is pure fantasy.
The cops and the
The
car. Yeah.
the kill the
Hmm.
cat sequence,
Hmm.
that from soup that like that whole thing is in his head.
Yeah. I could totally see that. Yeah. Um. So we're at the bar. We're at Harry's with the boys again. And this is where he sees Lewis Carruthers. He's so irritated. He just hates Lewis Carruthers from the get-go. He's like the Steve Carlsberg of Pat
Yeah.
Bateman's
Yeah.
world, just like fuck this guy.
Well, he's like we're the exact same guy, but I'm wearing it better
Yes.
because I need to have someone below me.
And this is where he goes into the bathroom at the bar and stands right behind Carruthers and has black glove killer gloves on, puts his hands around
Yeah.
Carruthers' neck. Carruthers turns around and is like, "Oh, Patrick,
I always knew.
I always knew." And he peels back the glove and kisses his hand.
He's like, ever since I saw you at the Christmas party wearing the Argyle sweat, like the most Brooks Brothers crush. And what's crazy here is that, like, Patrick Bateman, I love this interpretation that Patrick Bateman is like literally his brain can't compute
Yeah,
what's happening.
yeah,
Like system overload, short circuit. Again, not homophobic.
uh-uh,
Like it's so beyond homophobic. He doesn't even know how to react homophobically to like punch the guy in the face and call him a F slur and be like,
uh-huh.
no, like he can't even get there. Like my favorite part is he washes his gloves.
Yeah, he washes his hands with the gloves still on.
But this to me, and I know there's a couple of scenes that were kind of more like AIDS centric
Uh-huh.
about the AIDS generation, the AIDS era. But this to me is like kind of symbolic of that mystery around like, are you going to get AIDS by like sharing a toilet with people, by being in the same swimming pool? Like
Hmm.
that mystery of I'm going to catch his homosexuality. I don't want his dirty homosexual ick on my
Uh-huh.
gloves. I have
Yeah.
to wash my calfskin leather gloves off.
Yeah. Yeah. He Lewis is like, "Patrick, where are you going?" Patrick's storming out. Patrick says, I've got to return some videotapes."
Classic. Like
They,
that line is only said like twice, three times in this movie, but it has become such a catchphrase, I think. Like and I know that's one from the book, but it's so fucking spot on.
it's so good. I remember this line from the book being in it like 50 something times.
Yeah,
Like it's
that's it.
just
Yeah, yeah.
people keep saying some variation of returning tapes.
That's always his excuse for anything he wants
Yeah.
to get out of. At 8 o'clock, and especially because it's like at 11 o'clock at night, and I think a character is like, "Why are you returning videotapes that don't like?" It doesn't even make sense.
No. It
Like you're gonna get a fucking late fee anyway, and
it's
also you're just pay the late fee.
yeah, and it's also like playing off of that the same thing of like the white lie. We're like, "Oh, I can't. I
Yeah.
have to wash my hair that night or whatever."
Yes,
Like
exactly. I have to
it's
rearrange my sock drawer.
yes.
It's an excuse that's not an excuse.
So we've got this scene with Courtney, and
Oh, Courtney.
it's after we've learned this about Lewis.
I know.
And
He has to prove his manhood that he can
yes,
fuck a lady.
yes. So he goes and fucks Courtney, who is Lewis's fiance.
Yeah.
I love this whole conversation. This is such a great scene because she lights up a cigarette and he says, "I didn't know you smoked." And she goes, "You never noticed." And
God.
it's like, that's incredible
Yeah.
to
Well,
never
this entire
notice.
scene is like everything is in the subtext.
Yes. Subtext is for cowards.
The subtext is for cowards, but also subtext is like pretty goddamn powerful,
It's so good.
Because
She says,
everything is between the lines in this scene.
yeah, she says, I want to talk to you about something. And he's constantly, he cannot want, the moment somebody wants to have like
No.
a real conversation, he's like, "Oh, when did you get this done over here? Or when did this happen? Or
Yeah.
I've been thinking about this. Have you listened to this?"
I think everything says like, why do we need to talk about feel like he just can't like, why would we need to? You're fine. You look gorgeous. Why I need to talk about, can we have a real conversation? You look gorgeous. What do we need to talk about?
That's it. That was the line. And she eventually just says, "Patrick, if I don't see you before Easter, have a nice one, okay?"
But you know exactly what the subtext of this scene is.
She is she what is the subtext of the scene? My
I
mind
mean,
went like 50 places with what she could be talking about.
I mean, it's to me, to me, the way it's played is she's going to kill herself.
That
She is going to overdose
mhm.
on purpose, not on purpose. She's in a place. She's so disconnected from
Yeah.
like we've seen her like when she gets taken out. She's using more and more lithium. She's
Uh-huh.
doping herself up harder and harder. And now she knows what her end game is. And
Yeah.
now she has a timeline and she's saying her goodbyes.
Yeah. That
I
makes
mean,
perfect
but that's
sense.
the thing. It's not said, it is implied.
Uh-huh.
So it doesn't hit as hard, but you feel it quite hard.
I mean, it's so sad. It is so
Yeah.
sad, and it is
It's the last thing where she's like, "Hey Patrick, yeah, nothing."
oof. Oof. So they're at this bar again. All of these nightclubs that they go to, like trans people working the
Oh yeah.
door,
Yeah.
they're all so queer. They're so
Yeah.
queer, and it is these corporate suits, this Wall Street
Invading.
gang
Yeah.
invading this space that has been made cool by actual cool people, not
Yeah.
people who can buy their way into the space. I thought one thing that was really interesting here was this conversation that he has with Bryce, where Bryce says he starts going into this convoluted theory about how if you can catch
Oh, you can catch AIDS, you can
AIDS,
catch anything?
like you could catch dyslexia, and Patrick
Yeah.
is like, "I don't think dyslexia is a virus," and Bryce says they don't know. I mean, who would even know that? Like that's how
I
could
mean, if
be.
you can catch AIDS, you can surely catch autism, right?
And I'm like, wow,
We're
we
putting in the
really,
vaccines,
really called the Joe Rogan era here.
right? I mean, the Donald Trump through line is pretty present in our
Uh-huh.
American timeline.
Uh-huh.
Let's just say that in the 30 years that we've been
Yes.
working on this shit.
Yeah. There's a recurring theme throughout this movie where he says exactly what he is to people and they don't
Hmm.
hear him.
Yeah.
And there's with this model that he's talking to, she goes, "What do what do you do?" And he says, "I'm into murders and executions mostly." Oh, a lot of guys in mergers and acquisitions don't love that line of work.
I love that like these women at the club are models. They're in with the in crowd.
Hmm.
So like especially this model, she's like, you think I'm dumb, right? Like she knows she's playing the game too. She's dated guys like Patrick Bateman before. She
Hmm.
knows what these things are. She
Yeah.
knows Gorbachev is not downstairs because Gorbachev is not one of your friends.
Yes.
I know who that is. So it's that thing of like playing the same game with the escorts, with the prostitutes, but with people that are just like one level, a few levels higher
Hmm.
in the food chain. And they're kind of like rolling their eyes. They're like, oh, these fucking boys.
Yeah.
But she still goes home with them.
She still
And
does.
again, but we don't see anything. Next thing we know,
He's got
he's
like a
just
lock of her hair
twirling a lock of
in
her
his
hair.
office.
Implied violence. How did he get it? Did he kill her? Did he not kill her? Did he just snip it off while she slept? Does it matter?
Does it matter? Well, I don't think she slept much because we will see her head in his freezer
That is
shortly.
true.
He is doing the crossword
Meat,
with his
bone,
sunglasses on.
meat, bone,
It's
bone, meat,
so,
bone. This is the most Night Valian,
oh yeah.
like the most.
I would be lying if I didn't say that like reading Bret Easton Ellis didn't influence my humor a lot.
Yeah.
And his sense
But
of
like
the
I could
absurd is
literally see as
profound.
like, like on Night Vale, the answer to number 39 down is meat. Like it
Bone.
just, yeah,
Yep.
meat and bone.
Um, Gene comes in. Oh, Gene. Full shoulder pads. Like
Oh my
two
God.
inch pads.
Well, I mean, the thing about Chloe Sevigny is she's always been a fashion girly. Like
Uh-huh.
she has been in that world where like one, you can put anything on her and she makes it look like it's high fashion. And
Hmm.
two, she's like I think there's a elevated knowledge of fashion
Hmm.
that she just has that's like spot on.
He says, Gene, would you like to accompany me to dinner? And
And you know
Gene,
Jean's got a crush on her
she
boss.
does have a crush on him, and just say it. I can get us in anywhere. She's like, oh no,
I
Dorsey. It
don't
doesn't have to be that. He's like, no. He calls 2 at 9. Great. See you then. And the whole time you hear the man on the other line being like, I told you we
what?
have
Huh? No,
no
no, we no,
availability.
no.
And when he hangs up, Gene was like, you didn't give them a name. Oh, they know me there.
Oh, Patrick. That's the thing. It's the same with the like when he looks at someone, he's like, I want to play with your blood. What? Nothing.
Yes.
But we cut out the what nothing. It's just no reaction.
Yeah.
But in this, Jean, you can see her not say anything because of the imbalance of power, boss to secretary.
Hmm.
And also we know she's kind of crushing pretty hard on him, but she you can see on her face, she's like, ooh, huh?
Yeah. And and we get the sense from the scene that follows so they meet early at his place for drinks. They're clearly not going to Dorsia. And he when she talks a little bit about herself, we realize like she is fully aware that she has not picked good men or good
Yeah,
relationships to be
yeah,
in. But the whole time she's talking or he's talking to her, he is like flitting about the apartment looking through all the nooks and crannies for where like do I use this axe? Do I use a chainsaw? Do I need to tape her up first?
yeah.
He's just looking through murder weapons and drawers. And he references Ted Bundy, and she's like, I don't know who that is,
Right. What's
which I
interesting,
love.
like
Yeah.
the difference between the warm up,
Hmm.
the normal warm up, Whitney Houston, Phil
Yeah.
Collins, etc., is it's an actual conversation.
Yeah.
Like and because she knows his life, she literally runs his calendar. She knows he has a relationship with Evelyn,
Hmm.
and she tries asking about it. What he asks her, do you have any boyfriend? She's like, oh, not really. I don't know. And he kind of mimics the same thing back to her, which is another thing that I noticed Christian Bale does in a couple of scenes. When he gets nervous, he just watches what the other actor does and
Uh-huh.
imitates it poorly.
He does that with Willem
With Donald
Dafoe
Kimball
at with Donald Kimball at the
putting the salt on
steakhouse.
the steak, like,
Yes.
oh, this is what normal people do. But he literally kind of mimics back to her, uh-oh, this is how people talk about relationships.
Uh-huh.
I'm just going to say the same thing. And it sounds so forced
Yeah.
when he says it.
Uh-huh.
And he pulls out that fucking nail gun.
Yeah, holds it to the back of her head where she's not turning around. He says, I guess you could just say I want to have a meaningful relationship with someone special. And it's then that his phone rings and it goes straight to the answering machine and it's Evelyn being like, "Hi, honey, I know you don't like me calling you that, but hey, I hope you're not off with some girl that you picked up." But she leaves this whole message, and that's where Gene kind of contemplates that,
Yeah.
yeah,
The
he's,
reality of the situation.
yeah. And she says, "Do you want me to go?" Excuse me, let me burp a little bit. "Do you want me to go?" And he's like, "Well, I don't think I can control myself." Again,
Yeah.
subtext, this is a normal conversation.
Yeah.
You just take this line of dialogue. Oh, this looks like two people who decide we should not enter into a
Have an
sexual
affair.
relationship. Yes, that would be
I
bad
can't
for our
I
lives.
can't control myself tonight.
I might hurt you.
I'm afraid about getting bruised.
Ooh.
Oh,
Ooh.
physically or emotionally or both.
So she gets out of it. And I think also he's realizing too. It's so funny how perfectly this overlays with an office relationship.
Yeah.
You go out to dinner with your secretary on a whim because you are attracted to her and she's attracted to you, and then you're at your house with her. And murder aside, just sleeping with your
Yeah.
secretary, there's a moment where
There's
you're like,
ramifications
this
here.
is all the reality. It's like there's a clear difference between having an affair with your secretary and murdering your
Yeah.
secretary.
Yeah. Yeah.
However, the question is, what decisions do you make based off of who you are? Well, he doesn't do it. The next day, he's at Smith and Walensky's.
Oh God, Smith and Walensky's.
Still have never. I don't think I've ever eaten at Smith and
I've never.
Walensky.
I used to I used to walk past, drive past there all the time. I'd be like, oh yeah, that's like the cocktail place? It's like the it's like TJ. You know the TGI like TGI Fridays used to be.
Uh-huh.
That was the place in cocktail. That shit used to
Oh
be
yeah,
hot shit.
yeah. It
And
was
then it
Sparks.
franchised.
Yep. It was Sparks that my stepdad always liked going to when he was in New York
Okay.
City. So it's a more upscale Smith and
What's the one in
Walensky.
Brooklyn? Peter Luger's. I only
Oh,
went to
Peter
Peter
Luger.
Luger's
Yeah.
once. I only went there
Yep.
once for lunch because that was all I could fucking afford.
Yeah. I think Sparks and I went to Delmonico one time.
Oh,
Oh,
I applied for a job at Delmonico,
wow.
and the hiring manager asked me who I voted for in the last election.
Wow.
There was a right answer and a wrong answer, and
Wow.
I gave the wrong answer. Actually, I think I shrugged it off. I was like, ha ha
Okay.
ha, just kidding. But no, really, who did you vote for? I was like,
You're like Al Gore?
yeah, probably.
So we have this back and forth with the detective, um, and and he's
This is where
trying to figure
this
out
is the mind
what's
fuck of
happening
like,
here.
because Paul Al. Okay, so Patrick Bateman puts a bunch of clothes in a suitcase, leaves a fake voice answering machine message saying, I'm going to London.
Uh-huh.
Hasta la vista, baby."
Uh-huh.
Throws away his clothes and his body, or keeps the body, or whatever the fuck. And then the idea that nobody checks his apartment, nobody checks Paul Allen's apartment, where
Uh-uh.
these bodies are now piling up.
Uh-huh.
Um, Donald Kimball does his legwork. He's like, here's the thing. Where were you that night? Patrick Bateman cannot answer that.
Uh-huh.
But Donald Kimball's like, yeah, he was with so and so, so and so, and so and so, and you. So like other people are are like collaborating his story
Yeah.
incorrectly.
Yeah. Because nobody knows who anybody is.
Yeah.
The number of times in this movie where he's talking to somebody and they shit talk about Patrick
I
Bateman
love
to
that.
him. Paul Allen earlier starts talking about
Yeah.
like
His
Pat.
lawyer.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, Patrick Bateman's girlfriend Evelyn. She's got a hot ass,
Yeah.
and you see the smile on Christian Bale's face. Like, good, I have a cool item. I own this girlfriend he's impressed with my girlfriend in the same way he'd be impressed with my watch.
But then they also always inevitably say, "Oh, Patrick Bateman, what a sop."
Yeah, he sucks. He's stupid. He's a nerd. He's
Yeah.
a dork. Whatever. Well, he's gonna pick up Christy again. He's gonna bring her back to his new apartment, which is Paul Allen's
Uh-huh.
apartment.
But Christy she knows what's up. Like this is again, she's like, is it going to be like last time? It won't be anything like last time. I had to go to the emergency room last time. It
Uh-huh.
won't be anything like last time. Again, so vague.
Yeah.
But
He
you
draws
again,
her in
subtext.
with more money. And,
Writes her a check.
yeah,
I mean, like he's got like a thick ass billful or money clip.
yeah. And we're going to meet Elizabeth, who is clearly somebody who he has known at some point in
Oh yeah.
time previously, because she's in the
Well,
same
she was
world
just
as
like
him.
we met at the Kentucky Derby.
That's right.
We make the rounds. Where do you summer? We do rich people things together.
Yeah.
But she's also the good time party girl.
Hmm.
Like she's a fun time drug girl.
And again, this is Guinevere Turner, the co-screenwriter, who is
Yeah.
so funny. She's so good in the scene. Uh,
Oh God. Because she's like she's doing that thing where she's like playing fucked up by not playing fucked up.
uh-huh. Did you go to Dalton? I feel like you went to. Oh, I think I met you at Surf Bar. Surf Bar sucks now.
It's like when she calls her drug dealer, she's like where am I? I'm like, I'm at Paul's. No, I meant the address.
Hmm.
I need your services. Take that to mean whatever you think it means. If I don't see you, I'm going to be so mad at you. See you at Smith Bar tomorrow.
So Patrick somehow convinces the two of them to get it
Well,
on, even though
by
she's like,
drugging
I'm
them,
by drugging them. Oh, yeah, that's right. I
by
forgot
drugging
about,
their
yeah,
wine.
that's right. He drugs their wine, gets them to make out, and then eventually he's explaining Whitney Houston to them.
I love it.
And during sex, Christy slips out, hoping just to be like, I'm done.
Peace out.
He's fucking this girl now, so I'll just move on. But soon we hear screaming under the
And it's like,
sheets.
and you don't see what's going on. You just see blood soaking through the sheet.
Uh-huh. And when,
Again, obscured.
yeah.
It's like there's like a veil, there's like a screen in front of the violence.
And when his face comes above the sheets, his mouth is covered in blood, so he's clearly like bitten
Eating
her
her?
and eating her.
Eating her out,
Ugh. Oh
slash eating
man.
her.
Yeah. Christy goes running. She finds a closet full of dead bodies wrapped in
Yep.
plastic. In the bathroom, he's spray painted dye yuppie scum on the wall, and the
Yeah.
bathtub is filled with bodies. He grabs her in the bathroom and starts biting her leg, and she kicks him in the face, which makes him mad, not the
I know.
face, you piece of trash.
Yeah.
And then he is chasing her naked, bloodied, through an apartment
But
complex with a
with the white
chainsaw.
Reeboks. It's the
Oh
white
yeah, he's got the white
Reeboks.
Reeboks
The
on.
white Reeboks really make the look. That's the thing is that he has to put on his like running shoes.
Uh-huh.
Like fully nude, has to put on running shoes.
Yep. And this is where we get into this is the first kind of like death scene that starts to seem truly absurd.
Yeah.
Because she's running down this long spiral staircase and he just holds the running chainsaw above the open atriumed area, drops it right at the right time, and all we see is her lying at the bottom, dead in a pool of blood with a chainsaw going through her side. Like none of it makes any physical
Now,
sense.
this is the most like uh giallo fashion death,
Uh-huh.
like tenebrae of like something that makes no sense logically, but then you see the beautiful tableau.
Yes.
It's like all in white, and the red is so red, and the model, beautiful body.
Yep.
This is where I think it's like an homage to those sort of like ridiculous Italian horror
Yeah.
movie deaths.
Yeah. I like in screenwriting and directing, editing, you want to kind of like transition your scenes visually or
Of course.
via some thing, and it transitions from this image to Patrick using crayons on the paper tablecloth and drawing
Yeah,
this picture. Remember when those were popular?
I do. Yeah. They're like, this is actually, I went to a very fancy restaurant with a friend of ours, Symphony Sanders,
Uh-huh.
that was very like, at one point they handed us like a thing and told us to draw. Like it was a whole thing.
Wow.
The express your creativity in between courses.
Uh-huh.
I don't know
That's
if it
so
was
good.
successful or not.
That's very funny.
And then we got to take that home as a remembrance of our meal there.
Oh my God. That's absurd. And I really love it. Well, he is breaking up with Evelyn in
Yes,
this restaurant. She's like, but your friends are my friends and my friends are your friends. I'm sorry, it just wouldn't work. He says,
he
here, I've thought
doesn't
about
care.
that. You can have our friends.
This is the thing where like I think this is he can't keep his daytime schedule and his nighttime schedule straight anymore.
Yeah, he's losing control.
Yeah.
He actually says that at the start, and she's not paying attention.
Yeah.
He's like, I need to engage in homicide on a massive scale, and I cannot keep up with it.
Yeah.
And she's like, I'm sorry, you break it. Wait, what's happening right now? Um, I really, oh my God, it's so hard because like this movie is so ironic, right? But it's hard not to laugh at the crazy shit that he says.
Yeah.
And she was like, what can I do? And he's like, well, you can stop making this fucking scene in a restaurant
Yeah.
if you
Well,
want to
because
do
that's the thing.
something.
He's more mortified at her drawing attention to them than he is at ending a relationship with his fiance.
Yeah.
That has more ramifications for him. People are looking at us negatively than I'm making you feel bad.
Yeah. Uh I think it's if you're ever in a position where you're needing to break up with somebody, you do want a level of honesty,
Sure.
but finding the right words is good. And his way of finding words for her is he says, I'm sorry, you're just not terribly important to me. And he says it in the way of like, I'm sorry, this just isn't working out.
Yeah,
Where are you going? I have to return some videotapes.
of course.
All right, we're in the final, final count, the final battle, the final dream sequence,
Is
whatever.
this all okay? So I have a question. Is this all shot in and around the Twin Towers,
This
the
this is
World Trade Center?
this is definitely the financial district.
Okay. But
This
it's that
is
thing of like when he goes into one building and it's the identical and he like
mhm.
kill and then goes were those the because I had never actually went into the World Trade Center. I never went
No,
into either
these
of them.
these are not the World Trade Center buildings because
Okay.
he goes in the wrong apartment building
Or
first.
office building. Yeah.
Um, no, he's trying to get to his apartment, is what's
Oh.
happening. I think that's what it is that he's trying to get into his. Oh, maybe
No, I
you're
think he's
right.
trying to get to
Oh,
his
it's
office because
office.
this
You're
is where
right.
he's trying to get to make that office phone call. So
You're right. You're right. You're right.
he's what starts with taking out some money. This is the scene that I remember so vividly. Like this is the point where like I'm like in my little flat in East Yorkshire over a winter break reading this book and I got to the feed me a cat ATM scene and I literally chucked that fucker across the room. I was like, I need a break. I'm going up for some air,
uh,
going for a walk.
and he.
So he does, the ATM says, feed me a cat. And he pulls out a fucking pistol.
Uh-huh.
And a woman sees him, an rich old lady sees him, and she's like, what are you doing? Shoots her
Uh-huh. Police sirens immediately.
immediately. Again, it's like the not like the absurd, the like we're skipping the logical beats of police see a thing and then come over, like it's no longer real because it's just montaged.
Uh-huh.
Like we're missing the connective tissue of reality that makes things feel real. And so
Hmm.
when you take that out, it feels absurd
Yeah.
or
And the
paranoid or,
yeah, and the cops have him, dead to rights in the street, drop the weapon, and he starts a shootout.
well, I love the like, he's just trying to like break into cars and it's like BMW, Porsche, Mustang,
Jaguar.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
Jaguar, like, you know, so perfect. So
Yes.
fucking perfect.
And he yeah, he is firing at these cops, like hits a couple of them, and then fires a shot that explodes this cop car.
Yeah.
And it is a moment where he kind of looks at his gun and he just looks surprised, like, that's not how this works.
Yeah. But in 80s action movies,
It
that
is.
is totally how this shit works.
Uh-huh.
In action fantasy,
He goes into the wrong building down in the finance, trying to find his office building. He goes in the wrong one, shoots the doorman.
I love it. Well, and the doorman's like, hello, Mr. Smith. So again, this whole thing of like people recognize him as not Patrick Bateman.
Yep. He has to
Shoot. Oh my God.
he
When
goes out the
he
revolving
goes
door,
through the revolving door
turns back
and then
around and shoots the janitor.
bam, and then goes right back in the
God.
like, come on, that is comedy. That's fucking comedy.
And then he winds up in the right building, kind of looks like he's about to shoot this other doorman, but he's just taking out his nice
Pulls out the
pen to
pen.
sign the sign-in sheet. Helicopters outside. He calls his lawyer, Harold, I think is his name. And yeah, Harold Carnes. So he calls Harold, and then this is like Blair Witch Project, right? Like the
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, it's the
This is
up close up the nose,
yeah.
sniveling. Just I'm gonna tell you everything I'm feeling right now.
Yeah.
And he says, I had to kill this. I killed all these women. This one woman, I had killed her. I had to. She was going to get away, and I killed Paul Allen with an axe. I
I
killed
killed
maybe
a
like,
guy in a park with his dog.
yeah, I maybe killed like 20 people. I have tapes of a lot of it. I have video of a lot of it. I also ate some of their brains. Even tried to cook a little bit. Not sure I'm going to get away with it this time anyway. Maybe if you're back in town at Harry's, I'll see you tomorrow. And then I think to me this is a scene that I really love here in the movie, but this scene in the book really hit me hard, which is when he goes to Paul Allen's apartment that next
Okay.
day, and there's a realtor showing the apartment,
Right.
and it is completely cleaned out. And it's something really haunting about one, it's haunting that this empty apartment that Paul Allen, like Patrick Bateman, like Timothy Bryce, like any of us, fully replaceable.
Oh yeah.
It is just, he is a meaningless look-alike cog in a wheel.
Yep.
His life never mattered. Your hope to
Shit goes
become
on.
like Paul Allen doesn't matter. Paul Allen's dead, or he's in London, or he never existed in the first place. This apartment is just empty. However, to
That's prime
Patrick,
real estate, baby.
and that's prime real estate, and we got to keep this shit moving. And Patrick Bateman's point of view is shocked that it's all cleared out and that nobody is taking him seriously. But I think what the realtor says when the what she represents to him is we're all the same. It, you're not going to get I know who you are. She
Yeah.
knows who he is. She knows he did all of this.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
she
She
had to
knows.
pay for the cleanup, but
Yeah.
she's not here to ruin her sale by calling out a serial killer in the apartment she's
Yeah.
trying to
Like she
move.
found six bodies
Yeah,
and knows exactly who this sweaty, nervous dude is.
yeah. I, I don't make any trouble. I suggest you go. Don't come
Yeah.
back. And she's so stern, and he understands we're all part of the same system, and the system needs to uphold the system. And that's where he starts to understand that. And that's where we start to understand the point of the novel and what the movie distilled and what Mary Harron distilled the novel down to in the movie, which
Yeah.
is the whole game is fucked. It's all
Yeah.
rigged. Who did what doesn't matter. The point is the system is fucked. There's
Because
just
that's a
evilness within.
more like is yeah, that's the more disturbing interpretation
Hmm.
is that the system absorbs a psycho killer as long as he looks all right and he has the right, like absorbs it right into it
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
keeps on trucking. I mean, the murders never happened. They were all in his head is disturbing,
Hmm.
but the systematic explanation of, yeah, people are dead. Paul
Yeah.
Allen is dead.
Yeah.
Even though some dude, his lawyer is going to say he just had dinner with Paul Allen twice in London.
Uh-huh.
Who knows what the fuck that means?
And this is where the movie is correct because we do protect Harvey Weinstein, we do protect Bill
Right?
Cosby, we do protect
Donald Trump.
and P. Diddy, and we protect these people that do the horrible things because inherently we're
Money,
afraid of
money
them,
talks and bullshit walks, man.
but we don't become unafraid of them until they are less powerful.
Yeah.
We don't actually start going after Woody Allen until his movies start sucking and not having box office. We don't really go
Or,
after
well,
Harvey
I would say,
Weinstein.
or until a mass, like a sort of like we reach critical mass in
Yes.
which the problem is not 10 people, it's 100 people,
Hmm.
in which the story gets out at such a level that it's like you could ignore 10, 20 NDAs, but 100, it's hard to start ignoring that. Hard
Yes.
to start to like to
Yeah.
smooth it over with rumors and
Yes.
innuendos.
I mean, I think for me, like the telling part about the to bring it back to like say Bill Cosby, you have to also not only have to establish that there are lots of people credibly accusing somebody because Bill Cosby for years was being credibly accused by dozens of women. And it's crazy to me that it was not until Hannibal Buress said what he said about it on stage that a fellow comedian, especially a black
Ah,
comedian, there needed to be
was like a whistleblower essentially.
yeah, well, it's the we needed to find out what his Achilles heel like we needed to see the
Ah,
crack in the armor. And the
yep.
moment the crack in the armor was there, everything else could take over.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
Bill Cosby always had the sheen of I mean, he was a god in
I
his
mean, the most
industry.
successful comedian in the business.
Yes, and somebody in the comedy world had to, and it sucks that this is how the system works, but that's what this movie is about, is that until we see the crack in the armor, there's no way we can collapse this castle. We could have all the
Yeah.
weapons of the world, but we have to find the entry point, and we had to prove that Bill Cosby was fallible, and that's what Hannibal Buress did, and that's how the system works. And the same thing with like Harvey Weinstein is that like we had to wait until his movies that he was making
We're sort of
weren't
fading
doing
from,
as
yeah,
well,
yeah, yeah.
and that's how
Yeah.
Hollywood works too. It's not until you aren't
You're
box
the
office
until
anymore.
you're the restaurant that's on its way out. The
Yes.
restaurant that used to be
Yes.
cool a year ago when you're winning when you're Shakespeare in Love top of your game
Mm-hmm.
versus a decade later when you're still open for
Yep.
business, but people aren't flocking to
Yes.
your thing anymore.
Yes, that's exactly it. So, anyways, yeah, that's this. I think really the heartbeat of this film, the moral heartbeat of the film, is the realtor scene here.
Yeah.
Well, he goes to Harry's Cecil, and
Yep.
I think that's the name of the bar, and he
Yeah.
runs into unrelated Harold Carnes, his lawyer.
Yeah.
This man looks so familiar to me. This lawyer of his. I don't know if
He
because
did look familiar to me. It was more just the fact like the like playing actual neutral.
uh-huh.
Like that kind of thing that we've learned from screen acting that's different from stage acting, which is if you can literally just do nothing, people will read onto your face what
Hmm.
is required of the scene and what they want to read. And this actor does such a good job when Patrick Bateman is like, I did the thing, I did the, and it's like, oh my God, that was such a funny prank, but your only Achilles heel is you pick Patrick Bateman. Like, what an asshole.
No one would believe that he could do any of that because he's such a simp.
Right. But then when Patrick Bateman actually goes into like he's like breaking down again, he's causing a scene in
Hmm.
public, and this actor just plays neutral.
Yes.
Like, does he know? Does he not know? Is he hearing? Is Patrick Bateman even saying this shit out loud?
I had that moment was similar to the Willem Dafoe scenes, which is you're there's a couple of ways to play that character. One is you believe Patrick Bateman, one you
Yep.
don't believe Patrick Bateman, or two, three, you're not sure. And in this scene, this man's face looks like either please stop, you're making a scene,
Yes.
or you're incriminating yourself. And I
Oh, yeah, yeah,
don't
yeah, yeah.
want to
I don't want
hear,
to,
I
I
don't,
can't hear this.
this is not what, yeah, you're ruining the party either by making a scene or by revealing yourself to be a psychopath. And my life is a lot better if you're not a psychopath.
Right.
Everyone's life is better if you're not a psychopath. Shut up. Go sit back down with your friends.
As your counsel, I recommend you not to be telling me these things.
Yeah, because I don't want to deal with that case. I don't
Yeah.
want to deal with that shit. Nobody's happy about that's disgusting. What you're talking about? No one wants to deal with that shit. Just go back to doing what you're doing. You're fine. Also, he tells Patrick, I had dinner twice with Paul Allen in London, like just 10 days ago. So who even knows?
Yep.
Jean finds Patrick's diary, which
Oh,
goes
yeah.
from being like just a dates and appointments to
But even that
drawings.
is like, there's literally like, I think it's fascinating. There's literally like nothing in his
There's
calendar.
no, if you see something on a weekday, it's like noon
One thing.
lunch,
So
and then it'll
literally,
be like 8 p.m. dinner.
no meetings,
Mm-mm.
he doesn't work.
No,
He just consumes.
yeah. But he returns to the table with his boys, and he's laughing and
They're like, you're
relieved.
all
And
fired up. What are you so
yeah,
fired up about,
I'm just a
Patrick?
happy camper.
God.
And we get our final voiceover, and he's like, my pain is constant and sharp. I want my pain inflicted on others, but my punishment continues to elude me anyway, and I gain no deeper knowledge of myself. This confession has meant nothing. End.
Beautiful.
So nihilistic. Jesus
Yeah.
fucking Christ. Cecil, shall we rate this movie?
Yes, let's.
Okay, let's talk about approachability if you're horror movie squeamish. How approachable is this movie? On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being like, do not approach the movie, 10 being absolutely, you'll be fine. I would give American Psycho like 7 out of 10 lectures on Whitney Houston. I don't think this is a horror movie. I think it is using horror tropes. I mean, it is a horror movie because I'm very liberal about what I define as horror. And I think it's using enough horror tropes that it validates talking about it on the show, and it's violent. It's upsetting. And I say 7 out of 10 just because it doesn't pull its punches, it hides its punches. And it doesn't show you everything. So the gore is not there. It's more splatter.
Oh, yes.
And it's implied, speaking as somebody who writes horror comedy for podcasts, you can do a lot of really good, spooky, upsetting shit by not being able to see what's happening.
By talking around what you're
But
talking about.
yeah, and it's maybe that gets to you, but the movie's not scary at all. It's not really creepy. It's a portrait of a psycho and the shit he talks about having done that it suggests that he did do. It's a lot of misogynistic violence, not fully depicted, bloody murders, homophobic slurs, racist and anti-Semitic slurs, yada, yada, yada. So just know that.
Just like America.
Just like America. But I think it's a brilliant script. I think the fact that it is directed and written by women, I think really, I think helps safeguard from it becoming not a parody of itself, but an exaltation of the
Yeah.
violence.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
7 out of 10 for approachability. To speak nothing of approachability, Cecil, how do you rate this as a horror movie?
I'm going back and forth between giving this like an 8 or a 9. It's an
Uh-huh.
8.5 because, like you said, it's a horror movie that is not structured like a lot of the male-dominated industry that is the horror
Yeah,
movie
yeah, yeah,
industry
yeah.
for so long, the sort of men, women, and chainsaws era of horror.
What a great way of putting that. Yeah.
but it's horrible in the way that it deals with horrific things in a way
Mhm.
that like Harold Pinter would deal with it
Yeah,
by
yeah,
like
yeah.
implying it
Uh-huh.
by like if I get out of this chair dot dot dot
Pause.
implied violence.
Yep.
But I think what makes it great is that it uses horror tropes in a way that are so visceral, that are so potent and loaded that you just need a sprinkle of it rather than like a whole cup full of it.
Hmm.
And so it comes off as less a horror movie than it does a drama, a thriller, a comedy, whatever kind of genre. But I still say it's fucking there. And for
Yeah.
that reason, I also, this cast, they're like everybody's on the brink of being superstardom as opposed to great. They're doing the great work rather than the
Uh-huh.
superstar work. And
Yes.
for that, fucking, yeah, 9 out of 10 reservations at Dorsia.
Ugh, goddamn. Well, let us figure out what movie we shall watch next. You've got a scare die, I've got a style die. We'll roll those up and see what movie matches those two things. So, Cecil, on your scare die, if you roll a one, our next movie scares technology. Two, it's a wild card. Three, conspiracy. Four, Mother Nature. Five, magic. Or six, zombie.
That's a 5.
Magic.
I love magic.
I like magic too. We're going to match up your magic with the style that I roll. If I roll a one, it's got to be a black and white picture. Two, it's got to have a one word title. Three, it's got to be a sequel, prequel, or remake. Four, it's got to be in New York, New York. Five, it's a found footage movie. Or six, it's from the European Union. Let's see what we got here. That is a four, New York, New York.
Okay, okay.
We wrote down a few possibilities that could fit this, but we also have a Letterboxd account. We're Random Horror 9 over on Letterboxd, and you can see all of our possible die roll matchups and comment with movies you think might fit those things. So, Cecil, what did we write on Magic meets New York, New York? Oh, what a fun bunch of movies.
Yeah. It's a mixed bag here.
Ghostbusters, of
Sure.
course. Sure.
I was
Why
like
not?
Ghostbusters, or I would even say Ghostbusters 2 has more quote magic in it.
It's a great way of saying it. Yep. I think the one that really fits Magic with a K and New York City is Dario Argento's Inferno,
Absolutely.
which is in the Big
Yeah.
Apple.
Yeah, which
Yes.
it like spooky books, even though it's clearly kind of it's a New York backdrop.
Yeah, yeah.
Like it's people who have been to New York recreating New York, but still, I'll absolutely take it.
Uh-huh.
And then there's the last one, which I've never seen. I know it's a little more culty, Satan worshipy, but
Hmm.
The Seventh Victim.
Yeah. This is a movie I've been wanting to watch for a long time, and
Same.
yeah. And wait, this is I'm gonna pull this up. This is 1943. This is looking. It has to do with like satanic cult in in Greenwich Village. So this one really hits New York, New York in a way that
Yes.
I don't think the other two don't feel quite as much like they're fantasy New York a little bit.
Yes.
Um, I think the first Ghostbusters actually does a better job of depicting New York
Oh,
City
absolutely. I
than
mean,
the
like
second.
just you just think of like Bill Murray, in that huge shot of the Lincoln Center Plaza. Yeah,
Yeah.
very much.
Well, let's talk about what people on Letterboxd had to say. And oh, yeah, we've got some good ones here. That
So
Magic is going to
Monster
be tough. Magic's going to be
Magic is
tough.
tough. Magic
Yeah,
is tough. Monstrum recommends The Devil's Advocate.
of course.
Keanu Reeves, a lawyer, accepts a new position in a New York law firm, but strange occurrences lead him to questioning who or what his boss is. Spoiler alert, it's the devil.
It's Al Pacino and
And
Keanu
Keanu
Reeves,
Reeves
right?
and,
Yeah.
and Charlize Theron, if I
Oh,
remember
that's
right.
right.
And
Yep.
this is very like New York is a backdrop.
Uh-huh.
Absolutely. JB Wolf, Devil's Advocate, Weaponized Toaster, Seconds Inferno, and recommends Q, the Winged Serpent.
That's a good one. Is that
Yeah, I think of this more as
magic?
like a creature feature, but
Uh-huh.
it's maybe there's some magic in there. Yeah, a fleeing petty swindler finds the New York nest of Aztec deity Quetzalcoatl, the man-eating flying serpent. So,
Right.
yeah, Magic Beast, sort of. Yeah, we're
Okay.
there. Let's see. Oh, Constantine. Oh, no, wait. Constantine's not sure if you're using demons as part of magic labels, but Constantine should definitely be at least nominated. But Constantine takes place in Los Angeles, so I might have to strike that one from the
Uh,
record. Maddie Parka recommends 1408. Again, the magic ghost
Paranormal.
paranormal. It's definitely a haunted hotel. Magic, maybe? Question mark.
Hmm.
Cronenberg TA, Thirds and Inferno. Fifth Hammer recommends Apartment 7A, which is like I know I've seen this title. I don't quite know what this is about. Terry Gianofrio dreams of Broadway success in New York City, but after suffering an injury, an older wealthy couple welcomes her into their home in Bramford. When she receives an offer at another chance, it seems that all her dreams are coming true. However, disturbing occurrences soon have her second guessing it all. Kind of sounds like a devil's make a deal with the devil kind
Hmm.
of Faustian
Interesting.
deal kind of thing.
Interesting.
Suspicious Beans recommends Wolfen from 1981. I've never seen Wolfen.
Okay.
Supernatural abilities count as magic, but definitely NYC. Yeah, I feel like this is like a early 80s, like gritty New York City kind of movie. New York cop criminologists search for the cause of a series of deaths featuring evidence of animal attacks, but they find out a connection between crimes and an indigenous legend about wolf spirits.
Okay. I like Wolf.
Ace Diamond, seconds 1408, and L Paradise, or I Paradise, I can't quite tell. I Paradise recommends The Oracle, 1985, a low budget directed by Roberta Findlay. A lady moves into a new apartment, does a seance. That was a bad idea, and hijinks ensue. Features a lot of side characters doing the absolute most. Oh no. You know, I love side characters doing the absolute
Oh,
most,
I love it so
especially if
much.
they're children. The award for doing the most child actor.
Hold on just a second. Let me see if I can find. This looks
Oh
so
dear, the
interesting.
poster looks
Uh-huh.
that shit.
I can't tell how New Yorky it is, but
I don't know. I see a quick YouTube clip of people walking down a street. I think
hmm.
it's pretty New Yorky.
Oh, that's the thing I love about New York City is they have streets.
Yes, that's right. No,
Hmm.
this looks very like Gypsy's Curse kind of. I mean, it's called the Oracle.
Right. It does look magique. It's got like there's like tarot cards in the poster or something. Okay. Interesting. Well, we have some good ones here. Some interesting ones. I don't know anything about Apartment 7A, but
Yeah.
that movie came out this year
Okay,
or
that's
came
why.
out in
That's why it
2024, I should
sounds
say.
very familiar.
Yeah.
Recent.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, Jeffrey. I think we've got one hard hitting. Like Inferno seems like the choice.
I think so. I think to me it was Inferno and Seventh Victim, and it was a
Yeah.
question of do you want to go more magic or more New York,
Yeah.
New York?
Because I think the thing about the seventh victim, it's more conspiracy.
Yes.
Like they're doing rituals,
Uh-huh.
less magic rituals. It's more about like they're out, everybody's out to get you versus
Yeah.
Inferno, which is like, oh my God, I just like the backdrop. They're like New York City street. And you're like, this shit is filmed on an Italian soundstage. But
Uh-huh.
like magic tomes, dusty old bookshops, mother of tears, mother of fucking pearls. I can't remember which of the mother trilogies we've got here.
Yeah, I've been wanting to see this movie for quite a while and
It's got the same kind of energy as The Beyond.
uh-huh.
Like it's got that vibe.
Yeah. And I love Argento
Yeah,
and I think really diving into magic is the most important thing.
I think it's good.
So,
I think it's a good choice.
yeah, I think so. So let's do that. Well, thank you all for listening. Thank you, Cecil, for talking with me. If you have thoughts on American Psycho or ideas for a movie that you think would have been good, Magic meets New York, New York, let us know on Instagram or on Patreon at Random Horror 9. Those Patreon public discussion threads for every episode. You don't have to be a paying member to participate in those. So watch Inferno, Dario Argento, 1980 with us this week, and come on back next Tuesday for a new episode. Have a restful night with no one killing you to the tune of Susu Studio or nothing. Boo boo boodio.
Boo!
No, boo.